opportunity to ask questions and make comments, whether they relate to high school graduate, distance learning, social and emotional support of our students and staff, food service distribution of meals, HR issues, etc. So please be prepared to make your comments, presentations in the workshop. And of course, at the end of the workshop presentations, we'll make time to take up any other issues for discussion that were not covered during the workshop. This meeting is live right now on palmbeachschools.org. Members of the public have been told that if they wish to view the meeting at that website in the banner on the homepage, they should just click the button that reads Watch Live. This meeting is also being televised live on Comcast Channel 235, TNT UVerse Channel 99. The meeting is being recorded and will be posted in its entirety on the district's website later this afternoon. Board members, I will now ask Mrs. Bass to roll and ask that you please verbalize your responses instead of just raising your hands so it can be captured in the recording. Mrs. Bass?
District 1, Barbara Schmidt. Here. District 2, Chuck Shaw.
Here.
District 3, Karen Morrell.
Here.
District 4, Erica Whitfield.
Here.
District 5, Frank Barnieri.
Here.
District 6, Marcia Andrews.
Here.
District 7, Deborah Robinson.
Here.
Also, we have a quorum of all 7 board members present. Also joining us on our virtual dais is Superintendent Dr. Donald Fenoy, General Counsel Julianne Rico, and Inspector General Lung Chu. I've also asked Palm Beach County Student Council President Jaden Manuel to join us today, although he typically does not join us for workshops. He and I have spoken, and I know he may have questions or concerns that he or members of the council may like the board or the administration to address or consider. Senior staff members will join us periodically as they share their reports and to answer questions as directed by the superintendent. I want to remind all to please keep your microphones muted if you are not speaking to eliminate that audio feedback. This meeting is being transcribed into closed captioning, so please remember to speak at a reasonable pace. Now please direct your attention to the flag on the screen. I ask everyone to keep their microphones muted as Dr. Fenoy leads us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Fenoy. The first workshop listed is facilitation of virtual meetings. This is a time for us to review how we are going to run meetings in this virtual mode and to share it with all the public as well. First, I'd like to say, let's all please be patient with one another and with the technology. We are in uncharted waters here. We decided to hold this workshop a week prior to the board meeting so that we can be prepared for any glitches. If they occur today, our very competent IT team is here standing by to correct them as quickly as possible. And what we learned today will help ensure that the regular board meeting next week and the meetings held in the weeks to come will run as smoothly as possible and hopefully without those glitches. Each board member received one-on-one training with their IT team and the board clerk to go through the Google Meet technology. What we are all seeing on the screen now are people who would typically be sitting at this dais during a board meeting. Hopefully the public is seeing the same. I want to remind all to please keep your microphones muted if you are not speaking to eliminate that audio feedback. Members of the dais, when you want to make a comment, please raise your hand so I can see it and everyone else can see it. I will make note, as I always do, on calling you on the order that I believe I saw you raise your hand, except for, of course, for the superintendent and the general counsel, who always get to bump us if they have a comment they would like to insert. I'll call on them as soon as I am able to do so. The same will be for making motions and seconds on those motions. Please raise your hand so that I can see who's making the motion and we can get it in the record. If you need to step away from the meeting at any time during the meeting, please turn off your camera. This will let us all know that you have stepped away, although I know and want the public to know that you can still hear what is happening in the meeting even though your camera is turned off. The presentation that Dr. Fenoy and staff will share later will be presented on this screen, but it is also available by opening the attachment in Board Docs. All of us in the public can see it there as well. Are we all seeing Board Docs as we normally would? You can all see it? Raise your hand so I know everybody can see it. Great. Now, are there any questions regarding how this meeting will be conducted? I see nobody saying anything. Okay, Dr. Fenoy, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Barbier. I appreciate that. And it's good seeing all the board members here today. I get the privilege, obviously, speaking to all of you every week, but this is the first test. People across the world are looking at our virtual board meeting. We've been calls all day. So let's put on a good performance, ladies and gentlemen. As a district, we are making history right now, as Mr. Barbier stated, as we take part in our first ever virtual meeting of the school board of Palm Beach County. Public meetings of the board, whether they have been held traditionally or virtually as necessitated by the current pandemic, are not only legally mandated, they are critical to the integrity and equal representation of our district as a whole, as we discuss and decide on educational issues facing students, staff, and our community at large. Life today is very different than it was just a matter of weeks ago when we last met for a school board meeting in our traditional setting at the school district administrative offices. The tremendous transformation that this district has made in just a matter of weeks as we adhere to safety measures intended to keep our students and staff safe is truly remarkable. If you measure success by the dedication of our educators, the resilience and determination of our students, the more than 1 million free meals served to children by food service, and the 65,000 district computers we have put in the hands of students who did not have technology at home, we are doing exceptionally well. The success of this swift evolution is no accident. It is rooted in technical proficiency, research, and preparation that occurred well in advance of this public health crisis. The district's instructional continuity plan, which drives our current distance learning platform, was first developed by the Department of Teaching and Learning in 2014 amid the Ebola scare. Our district never reached the crisis level at which the plan was intended for back then, but again, we were prepared. The original plan incorporated distance instruction through digital and TV platforms. In fact, all TV programming was scheduled in case it was needed. This past February, the team modified the plan in the weeks leading up to the closing of schools to meet the unique demands and challenges of transitioning to distance learning during this global pandemic. Again, what made the difference was that our district already had a solid framework in place. As you will learn more about the moment from our academic team on March 31st, the very first day of distance learning, 149,000 of the district's 174,000 K-12 students signed in digitally through the district's students portal. As you know, Governor DeSantis has closed public and private school campuses for the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year. But I assure you that learning continues. I am impressed by the level of participation and engagement that I'm seeing from students when I drop in virtually and join live Google Classroom instructions. Teachers are making learning interesting, just as they do in traditional classrooms. I'd like to extend a big thank you to the elementary school teacher, Robin Noel from Elbridge Gale and Gabriela Martinez from Heritage, who along with their students, extended me a warm welcome yesterday as I took part in their reading lessons. Their work is truly impressive. I am also seeing virtual instruction firsthand in my own house every single day as I watch my son interact with his teachers online. It's exciting for me as a parent and as an educator to see how students and teachers have adapted so quickly, despite the challenges of working as one from separate locations. Although our research tells us that 98% of our students are engaging and participating in distance learning, we are working diligently to identify those students who have not. It is imperative that we identify and address any and all inequities in access to high quality education. In a moment, you will learn much more about the work that is underway to further close the digital divide in Palm Beach County and ensure that every child has the support that they need to reach their full potential. To parents joining us today for this virtual workshop, please know that your child's principal, teachers, our entire academic team, and our board members are well aware that the challenges of distance learning may be stressful on both you and your child. Please lean on us. I cannot overemphasize the importance of open lines of communication between you and your child's teachers. Reach out to them with questions and concerns. Teachers are ready to work with you and provide support during this unconventional time and beyond. It is only by working together that we can continue to motivate our students and help them thrive and succeed. In the interest of full transparency and to give our board members and everyone joining us today a comprehensive look at the work underway in our district as it pertains to distance learning and pandemic operations, I have instructed various departments to share their current work. You'll be updated about distance learning practices and procedures, mental health services. You'll hear from our Chief Finance Officer and our General Counsel. Learn about the tremendous work underway through our Operations Department and Human Resources, and how the communications team is working to keep you informed and aware in this rapidly changing environment. Our updates begin now with the Deputy Superintendent, Keith Oswald, who will present an overview from the Academic Division.
Thank you, Dr. Fenoy, and good afternoon, board members. It's a pleasure to see you, even if virtually. I want to first start by thanking all of our students, our teachers, our school administrators, district staff that have really come together in our entire community to make our academic virtual education plan roll out so smoothly. Now, we know it's not perfect. We are working through some of the glitches, and we'll continue to do that. And why was this so successful? It was a well-developed plan, as Dr. Fenoy stated, that included with 4 phases. First phase was the readiness phase. In this phase, you'll see is where we surveyed our community on the needs for devices and Wi-Fi access. In addition, we established our instructional framework and what that would look like to prepare our training materials for our teachers and our community members, as well as developing a TV broadcast schedule. On this next slide, you'll see the 3 delivery options that were utilized, that are being utilized for distance learning. The first option is what you're seeing the majority of. This is our teacher-led instruction through Google Classroom, Google Hangouts, such as we're doing here right now. Option 2, I want to do a big shout out to Dr. Sheffield and her entire team around our district-led instruction via our website. Our instructional continuity site houses lessons in every one of the subject areas that we provide in our school district, with pre-recorded lessons, as well as a option for parents and students to call in after reviewing these lessons, which leads into option 3, our district-led instruction via the television set. So here, again, recorded lessons provided to our community via the television, as well as office hours for individuals that may have questions on the lessons provided. Our next phase was the deployment. So once it was announced that schools would be closed is when we rolled out everything that occurred in phase 1. So the deployment of our devices through our school sites, our regional sites, our professional development training, and a big shout out to our trailblazers. As you know, we have over 2,000 trailblazers who provided additional level of support at the school center around how do you deliver education virtually. We provided training for our principals on a regular basis, and we released the instructional continuity site. On the next slide, you'll see that based on this work, and through our survey, an incredible amount of individuals responding, close to 150,000, we delivered almost 65,000 devices to our community. We continue to work through that process to this day for those individuals who still need a device. In addition, the Wi-Fi needs, we continue to problem solve there with our community that need Wi-Fi, where 10% of the survey respondents identified that need support. On the next slide, you'll see some of the work and pictures of our schools and what they were doing on delivering of these devices. And I want to do a big shout out to our Education Foundation, who has been raising dollars and devices for our community. So through partners such as FPL, Office Depot, and our community buying devices for our community. So thanks for their partners to make this all work. The next slide, you'll see an example of what our professional development on-demand training looks like. So everything from how to set up a Google Classroom, how to do a Google Hangout, and so much more is on demand and able to be provided to our teachers at any time. And let me tell you, they were used. On this next slide, you'll see just how much of that. Google Classrooms between March 23rd and April 17th, over 23,000 were created, bringing up a total of close to 35,000 active Google Classrooms happening right now. Our teachers, close to 2 million posts of work to support our students through these Google Classrooms. In addition, the instructional continuity site that I talked to you that Dr. Sheffield and her team provided, has over 100,000 people hitting that site to provide the resources, not just to our teachers, but to our entire community, again, through our portal. And you can see the professional development continues to be utilized throughout our district. Under the teach and monitoring section, this is when everything we just talked about, it went down to the schools and to the teachers, where they actually opened up their classrooms to our students. In addition, we continue to provide support, training support during this time for our teachers, our parents, with hotlines and other resources during this phase. On the next slide, you'll see an example of our TV broadcast schedule. So again, many of our community members utilizing this as either for a few for core and some for supplemental instruction. And so when we really wanted to do is to be able to monitor and measure all of this work. How would we do that? So thanks to our IT, our ET, our research team provided these dashboards. We opened this up to our board members. A few of you stepped in and got a review of this dashboards. And again, if any others want to take a deeper dive, we'd be happy to show you all that this has to offer. There's a lot of filters here, but I want to orient you to right now, it's just those two top green bars. So since March 31st to up to yesterday, or actually up to last Friday, we had over 171,000 students access the portal through online education. That results into 98% of our students accessing virtual education. So on a weekly basis, we're looking at about 95%, and then on a daily basis, roughly about an 85%, because we know not every single student is going in on every single day. Now, our key there is to find out those students who, one, have yet to engage, and our principals, our teachers, our counselors are working to make sure that we remove the additional barriers that keep students from accessing virtually on a regular basis. The two bars below, so as we stated earlier, we provided 65,000 devices out to our community. We're able to identify those devices and to find out if they've actually been used for virtual education. And I'm pleased to announce that at a 99.6% rate, they've been utilized for virtual education. So our community is using these devices that were deployed. And to the right are the unique tile access. So you can see the majority of what students are utilizing is Google Classrooms, but we're able to look into every type of platform that we provide. On the next slide, we're able to look at that same information on a daily basis. So again, we're able to filter in by school, by type of usage, by special groups, etc. And on the next slide, we're able to do that, as I said, by school, by every single day, and in addition, able to zero into every single classroom. And then on the back side, what we provide at each of our schools is a list of rosters of students who have yet to engage in virtual education, so that, again, additional tool for them to make sure that we remove those barriers, to make sure that those kids are engaged and stay engaged in online education. And on the next slide, not only are we providing the instructional support to our schools and to our students, but the whole child. Our behavioral and mental health supports continue to be rolled out and provided to our schools. And again, if any community members are in need of support, mental and behavioral health support, these are some phone numbers that you can call and we'll get support to you immediately. And finally, our last phase is the recovery phase. This is where we're beginning to engage in, once we get through this pandemic, what does it look like when we come out of this? What does summer look like? What does next school year look like? So we're beginning to have those conversations at that time, at this time. So at this time, I'll take any questions that the board members may have.
Mrs. Whitfield?
Thank you. I was just curious about the slide where you had individual school information. You had, what the percentage was for each school. Is there any way we can see that so we can understand how our individual schools are doing in our communities?
Absolutely. So we can, Ms. Whitfield, after the board meeting, we'll set up a time to sit with you. We provide this information in a board response. that we can go through and show you all of the different filters.
That would be great. Thank you.
Mrs. Anders, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, I'd like to thank Mark Howard for actually showing me the demonstration of the dashboard. And as you look at the dashboard, you see that, our scores are high, but as you kind of zero in at some other schools, especially in the Glades region, I saw the numbers were not as positive as they should be, with a lot of the children not having access, making access to the computer. So one of the things I wanted to ask about is, how did it go? Every child got a computer, but if you had 5 kids at one school, a parent had 5 kids, could be more at one particular school. Is that all that they had, with one computer? And how are we trying to work that through to make sure that all of the children, if you have maybe 6 kids in a home from one school, how are we working with that situation?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ms. Andrews. We do have that situation come up more often than not. So if a family had a student in every level at elementary, middle, and high, they got 3 devices. If they had multiple children in one level, such as 3 or 4 children in elementary, we used a 2-to-1 ratio. So we would give 2 devices. For 2 students, we gave a device. So with 3 students, they received 2 devices. And then families that still needed additional support, we're working through that through the principals and the regional offices to provide that additional support.
And just to follow up, Mr. Barbieri.
Go ahead, Ms. Sanders.
With those children, we now know that a lot of children still have not received the devices. How have we structured to make sure that each of those homes are actually going to get the devices? Some of the parents didn't fill the surveys out. Some just didn't even know about the surveys. And we recognize from looking at the data from Mark Howard that a lot of children have not signed in. So what are we doing?
So if a family still is in need of a device, they should contact their school principal. The school principal then creates a ticket that goes to the regional office and to IT department for delivery. And we're continuing to do that as of today. So again, parents, if you're in need of a device, contact your principal, and they'll create that ticket.
Ms. Sanders, your microphone's off.
Will there be someone that could deliver a device to a home that can't pick up?
We'll work on that. If that's the situation, absolutely, we'll work through that process.
Okay.
Ms. Brill? Then after Ms. Brill, Ms. Whitfield.
Thank you. So first, I'd like to also request the opportunity to see how my schools are doing. So that's a request for you, Mr. Oswald. My second question, though, is the communities that are not wired for Wi-Fi, some of them also do not have cable television. What are we doing to assist in those communities?
So if they still don't have Wi-Fi, so we're partnering with Comcast and T-Mobile, who will provide free Wi-Fi access. If that's still a barrier, even if they don't have cable, they're able to watch with just the old-fashioned rabbit ears through one of our channels. And I have to find out what channel that is, but we'll push that out, even with just the rabbit ears. But again, if those families could reach out to their principal so we can begin to help remove those barriers for those families.
Go ahead, Ms. Brill, finish, and then after you, Mrs. Whitfield, and then Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. And my concern, I did point out one community, but there are some communities where the families are afraid to reach out because some of them are undocumented. They don't have the same access. Is there any way for anybody to assist them? Or I'm just worried about what those numbers are, and if we can find out, if we know which communities do not have the wiring for the Wi-Fi. Comcast delivered kits to some of them, but they don't have the infrastructure. And, what are we doing if they don't have television? I know we were told that they can also do it through their cell phones, but you know, a lot of those parents also are essential workers, and they are not home to assist their children with that. So can we, my basic question is, can we capture what those numbers are and have some type of plan for them?
Yeah, so Channel 12 is the station for those who don't have cable. For those families, there is a hotline that families can call where they don't have to be identified if they're concerned about that we could potentially talk through and work through their particular challenge. In addition, our schools every single day are working with those students who are not engaged, so we're able to measure that and trying to problem solve for additional support that is needed. So our schools have that list, they're working through it. And if there continues, please have them reach out to us centrally so that we can provide them that support.
Go ahead, Mrs. Whitfield.
So the couple of schools in my neighborhood have been on the very low list. Either phone call conversations with the students that can't get on to try to teach them, or they've even been putting together packets and getting those packets. That data at all, so we know if a student is completely not been responsive, or if they are getting some sort of education still, just so we can understand, the difference in the numbers.
Yeah, our principals and our regional offices, so our regional instructional superintendents, are capturing that data. We just don't have it at aggregate yet at the district level. So yes, so they're zeroing into every family and providing, as you stated, going well above and beyond too, where teachers are actually calling students, providing instruction on the phone. We provided packets earlier on to families as well. So again, we do have that data that we provide as a follow-up later.
But you do have it, so you'll actually be able to put that together one day so we can see how the numbers are, not just from the internet access?
Yes, we're working through that and how we define what that looks like. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Robinson and then Mrs. McQuinn.
Okay, thank you. So first, this whole thing is bugging me out. But all right, so to stay on point, first, I think our staff really did a heroic job of turning on a dime to go to this distance learning. From some of the conference calls I've been on with Council of Great Cities Schools, I know that there was at least one school district that basically did a pause for several weeks, and they're just now going to distance learning. So I think that was a heroic effort. I especially also want to thank Mark Howard and his team for that distance learning dashboard, and for having the foresight to share it with the public so that community-based people who are trying to help can look and see what the log-on rate is like for the community they're trying to help. I also want to acknowledge the principals that also did their own continued form of heroism. And I probably shouldn't do this, but to especially shout out Katrina Granger at Bethune Elementary. The numbers for log on for Bethune were pretty low. After I saw that, I called her and said, how can I help? Mrs. Granger, true to form, has actually been knocking on doors and delivering packets herself. I don't know that we're capturing that data, but I just want to thank everybody for their efforts. I do think that now, hopefully, is the time that we can take a deep breath and refocus. And I've had this conversation with some, but I think it's appropriate to put it out there. What are we doing to essentially narrow the curriculum for the rest of the school year so that teachers and families can focus on the most essential elements? And then the second point I want to make at this point is, in terms of access, I'm becoming increasingly aware of neighborhoods that by virtue of their infrastructure cannot get internet. And so it's not so much about the family's income, but by virtue of the infrastructure in their community. And I shared some of that information today. But I think as we do this, whatever we call that recovery phase, as we look forward, I think we have to put on the table, and I think it's appropriate for the school district to do it and pull in partners, broadband. And interestingly enough, I had a conversation with former school board member Jody Gleason today, because for those of you who were around, she, through the Education Commission many years ago, 15 years ago or so, tried to do countywide broadband using the underground fiber. I might not be using the right words, that already exists. That effort led to internet being available in Pleasant City. I think that there's some place in the Glades that at least it was available. I don't know if it's still operational, but this this internet access problem is at a fever pitch now because of this situation, but it's a long-standing problem, and so I think it's really time for us to put it on the table, pull in our partners, not only with the county, but with the medical community, who is now having to switch and really use telemedicine, and with other facets of the community to figure out how do we work together to get broadband internet access for all of our communities. And with that, I'll be quiet for a little bit. But I would like a response from staff about the narrowing of the curriculum. I think it's critically important.
So thank you, Dr. Robinson, and I want to thank you for your feedback on that piece. We do have work groups both at the regional office and at the central office that are working to identify those critical standards that have the strongest ROI, as well as skills and in parent-friendly language to be able to be pushed out in the very near future. So thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman, if you would give me a minute, please. I'd like to extend that offer to all board members. What Mr. Tierney and his team have set up, Kathy V is running it. We have a series of work groups, so we're extending sort of our brain power, extending down to regional offices, bringing in principal to work on different future programming issues. And so Dr. Robinson brought up this narrowing of the curriculum, I think in our one-on-one last week. And so we were able to put that on the list, and then Keith was able to assign that to a work group. So as different things bubble up in your communities, please let me know, or Mr. Tierney, or any of the chiefs, and we will put that on our work group protocol moving forward. Thank you.
Ms. McQuinn.
Thank you. This is not my comment, but going to the narrowing of the curriculum, I know that my neighborhood has several families with secondary, but also many elementary school children. And for example, one family has a kindergarten student, a fourth grade student, and then the ninth grade student who's Jupiter High going well. Typically our secondary students can advocate a little bit for themselves, but for example, the one who has she has the two elementary, one fine on grade level, the other kindergarten, who has some learning disabilities, just trying to do the assignments, for example, cut and paste, compound words. This is a family who is very, very appreciative of the school board's efforts, but very overwhelmed also by doing their own in-home jobs and then supervising 3 children, one of whom does have learning disabilities, and it's overwhelming for them. So the narrowing of the curriculum, I would say just more specific to elementary, but not necessarily. So I just know that our high school kids are usually better at speaking up for themselves. To my specific question, on Monday night, I had a virtual meeting with the AACY, American Association of Caregivers. They are responsible, remember, for the some family members who rely on these students to take care of them physically, in addition to going to school. And at that meeting, and by the way, they have 67 graduating seniors in that group, and I've sent them the information because they just don't always get the information. But family therapists from AACY who are going into, I'm moving specifically to the elementary level, the family therapists are helping the families call the school, and I'm assuming, remember, you know, I'm always defending principals, but they're calling the school and they're being told by a principal that they have no more computers. Now, So my question, follow up to that, so clearly this student has not been receiving instruction. Are the principals giving you, the regional superintendent, students' names of any student who has not checked in? And I know you addressed that, but specific to the student, have they done that?
So we have a whole protocol that's in place through the regional offices and the principals where they route that ticket. Once the principal verifies that the student is in need of that device, the regional offices then deploys that to the IT department for deployment of the device. So Ms. McQuinn, perhaps we can talk offline after for which school, but we'll definitely follow up with the regional superintendents, and they are listening to this broadcast. So we'll be sure that the message is clear with our schools and those families that are in need. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And a follow-up to the AACY question, again, these were two that came out. There is a family who cannot even get cable because the mom owes money. So are we going to penalize the student who at least somebody in that household is one of our students and is a caregiver? We're penalizing that student. They cannot access anything. How are we handling that?
So we do have that 12-2 station that is available for those families as well. And in those particular situations, our schools, no, we're not looking to penalize any student because of this situation. We're looking to work with the family and to problem solve the challenges that they face. So that means some other outside the box delivery of instruction, that's what we're working through. So if no one has to or contact that family, Ms. Quinn, if you could please, and if any other families out there that you have not talked to anyone, please reach out to your school principal or to the regional offices so that we can work through those challenges and help support you.
Okay, and I'm going to make sure that you get the specific names because the fact that the principal can't do anything about the fact that they haven't paid their cable bill, so they don't have a television. So, and believe me, I know out of 190,000 plus students that two families, obviously we're doing an incredible job, but we don't want to lose any of them. So I'm just going to get the names directly to your department and then you get them to wherever.
And we have done, as far as calls, we've actually called Comcast on behalf of certain families to help in situations like that. So I think it as well for this one.
Right. Mr. Shaw, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. This is for Mr. Oswald. A couple issues that are beyond this, but we're looking at the close of the school year. Can you give us an update on the issues of retention and summer school? Because I get a few questions that are being asked related to that. And when will specific information be out? And specifically, I heard from one assistant principal who was scheduled to be a summer school principal at another school. And that would mean that as kids come into to that summer school, these teachers and those APs would have no idea who these kids are because they aren't their students from during the regular year. So what kind of discussions have y'all had related to that issue?
Yes, so first on promotion retention. So there's been a lot of discussion around that, on that particular issue. Our governor did come out and talk about grade 3 students that they will be promoted, that the FSA test does not, the fact that they didn't take it, they will be promoted. And for our seniors, for Algebra 1 end of course exam and the English Language Arts exam, that those are waived. They just need to complete their credits for graduation. So we're working through those particular grade levels. Outside of that, our principals and our teachers are working with any of the families that there may be concerned with to provide additional support. So again, our principals and teachers are doing that as we speak to problem solve. Direction from the Department of Education is that we work through our student progression plan regarding those type of decisions. We do have a week from today at our board meeting some recommendations that you'll take action on, such as the waiving the credit Community service hours for our seniors, which is a local decision, that was 20 hours, and some other areas. As far as when we look forward to summer school and beyond, Dr. Fenoy has directed us, and we are currently in process of planning what does summer school look like under certain conditions. So if we're still in a stay-home mode, what does extended learning opportunities look like versus if we're able to relax some of that. Dr. Sheffield is working with a team right now, with her team, to design some of those recommendations to move forward in the very near future.
Mr. Shaw, you had a follow-up? No?
Yes, just quick, Keith, on the issue of students who parents have a real strong feeling about retention, that they would like to see a student retained. Is there any state guidance that's come on that, or is that an individual district decision?
Yeah, so that's a local decision based on the direction of the Department of Education, but to work closely with our families and to sit down with them to discuss the pros and cons. And so what we've directed through our regional offices and with our principals is if a family is requesting a retention, to sit down and let's look at the data. What does the data say about this particular student? What are the pros and cons of a retention? Our student progression plan does state if a student does meet all the requirements instructionally that they would be promoted. So those are conversations. Again, each case is very unique, and we want our principals and our teachers to have those conversations with each individual family and take those up case by case.
Mr. Manuel, would you like to give us a student's perspective on how the distance learning is going for a senior?
So from a senior's perspective, it hasn't been too difficult because I am familiar with Google Classroom, and most of my school in general is because our teachers have used it in the past. But if there's anything to say about the distance learning, it's almost like I've gotten more work now than I would have in school. And it might be because they're trying to make up for instructional time and then also adding on to what we would do at home. But it's been fairly simple, fairly easy to keep up with my work, and it's keeping me busy too, so I'm not bored. I'm doing nothing. So yeah.
Good, thank you. Dr. Robinson, go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to circle back. Can you hear me okay? Because I switched to a microphone. Okay, I'm assuming you hear me. So I want to circle back on what I call the narrowing of the curriculum. This whole pandemic has shown, I think, everybody how, as a society, we fail to meet the needs of the least of us, those of us who have fewer blessings. And so if we're talking about education, then we have to know that in addition to the summer slide, in addition to those whose needs we were not meeting, in addition to those who we were not connecting with, that we're going to have a COVID-19 slide. I can't imagine that more than, maybe 20% of the students are engaged to the level that they would have been engaged if they were in the bricks and mortar classroom with a live teacher. And I think that we have to acknowledge that despite all the central office efforts, this is just, humanity, right? So when I say narrowing of the curriculum, since for the most part, by the time we reach March 13th, most of the standards should have been covered. We were about to enter into the testing phase. That we should use this period, and my vote would be that we do it over the summer as well, as a review of the most important things that a student should know and be able to do at any grade level. Because what I'm hearing from parents is that their students are getting lots and lots of work. I don't know if it's as stated that it's to try to make up for loss of instructional time, but they're being overloaded. And the parents, and again, to Mrs. McQuinn's point, it appears this is much more elementary phenomenon, but the parents are completely overloaded trying to support their students. I think that we need to make a list of the essentials for each grade in each subject in each grade and give that to the teachers to focus on. And we can also give that to parents and community partners. So between now and whatever time we get back to whatever the new normal is going to be, people can work on with the students on the most important things. Because otherwise, I think parents are still going to be overloaded and the students are not going to review the things that they really, really need. And so I just want to make sure that all of the board members understood what I meant when I said narrowing of the curriculum is really a review of the most important elements. And I would hope that we could do this expeditiously. Like, I get the work group, I get we have processes to go through, but work groups take way too long, and we need to start providing parents and teachers with the most important things list as soon as possible. And the educators know what those things are. We just simply need to like write them down and everybody make the sign of the cross and move on.
Ms. Brill, then Mrs. Andrews. Ms. Brill first, then Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. And I'd like to return to the question of pupil grade retention. I did have an extensive conversation with Mr. Oswald and with Ms. Rico today regarding that. I actually also submitted a question online for non-agenda questions. And those child study team meetings are happening. They're happening already. And so I would ask the superintendent to implore the principals to look beyond just the data for pupil progression, because there are other factors, social emotional learning. It's an incredibly stressful time for these students. Some of them are so overwhelmed, the families are overwhelmed. So while they might be meeting what we would call our typical pupil progression goals, the families know their children better than anyone else. And so I would just ask that we have an open mind and not be rigid. And I did discuss with Mr. Oswald having an appeals process through the area offices, which, you know, I want to bring up here too, because there are some principals that are very rigid and sticklers for following policy exactly. And if our policy says they meet pupil progression, then they can't be retained. You know, some of these families know that their child needs to be. And for my district, it's mostly the really young ones. It's the kindergartners and the first graders that I'm hearing from the most, where the parents feel that they are not mature enough to progress, where the children are not getting it online. And they see that. So to the superintendent, I hope you can get that message out quickly. I hope you will agree that, you know, we need to lead with our hearts as well as our minds. Thank you.
Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. And I want to make sure I thank Mr. Oswald, Dr. Sheffield for excellent work. Very good. I've been following you all and what you're doing. I want to thank also Angela Moore and Dr. McTeer for doing a video Google with me on just the dashboard itself. But two questions at this time. One is we have some teachers who are having difficulty with this technology. And I know that everything's online now. We don't have a whole lot of trailblazers in certain areas of the district. How can some of the teachers get some training on these processes that we're doing? They're struggling and they're asking each other, but it's an online process. Is there an opportunity for the teachers to get some additional training?
Yes, absolutely. Training is available for 24/7, literally. So there's on-demand training through our instructional continuity site that holds all of the virtual training. We can do one-on-one training with teachers through Adam Miller's shop, who has a number of staff members to reach out. There's a hotline that teachers can call for support if they're running into any particular issues. So please, that teacher should just reach out either to the principal, to Adam Miller, and we'll provide that support immediately.
And just this last question, some of the parents are concerned because teachers have different schedules each day. Some days they're actually doing direct delivery. Some days it may be something else. And sometimes parents are seeing that children may not have anything going on. How do parents really know what the expectations are each day for their child?
So our teachers, one through our teachers and second through our school principals. So many of our school principals are providing messages out to their community to let them know what we're experiencing. In addition, our teachers are letting those students know what they're responsible throughout the week. If parents have additional needs or support, they should reach out to the classroom teacher or to the school administrators at that particular school if they're in need of additional support. And also on that last question, Ms. Andrews, when I say reach out to Abby Miller, that's regarding a technical support. If it's a instructional support, Diana Fetterman, her team has support there as well, instructional resources, and whatever the needs are for professional development for those teachers, we have it available.
Sorry, I had to wait for my microphone to come back on. Was there anybody else that I missed? I see no hands. All right, thank you, Mr. Oswald. Mr. Superintendent?
Ms. Paul will now take over. She's our Chief Operating Officer. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board Chair Barbieri, board members, and Superintendent Fenoy. I wanted to give you a brief update of our operations division and what we've basically been doing since school ended. Next slide. So we had a successful ramp up of community feeding, something that just blows the mind, 1 million meals served since the close of school. Actually, it's over 1 million meals served. So outstanding result from our team. Currently serving 20,000 children per day, more than 43,000 boxes of food provided to families in our great partnerships with Feeding South Florida, PAM Florida, First United Methodist Church, Jupiter Tequesta, and Jupiter First Church. An average number of 217 employees working each week to prepare meals at 35 sites, and we're in the process of expanding sites for summer feeding. And in order to minimize employee exposure, we're going to move to feeding 1 day per week starting in May. We'll be sure to provide that information on our district website, and we'll be serving multiple meals at that time. Next slide. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. The next slide deals with our maintenance and plant operations. We initially mobilized our custodians to perform a thorough cleaning of our schools. All our schools have been sanitized and re-sanitized in some cases, and we're doing that as needed. We started our AC to be recycled or be cycled at all our schools to manage the humidity level. And of course, that's at a significant cost savings. We are using our contract vendors for services such as roofing, landscaping, HVAC, fencing, and fire alarms. All that work continues. Our M&PO staff, by and large, have been working from home beginning March 30th. They're on a standby basis and will perform work as needed. And also, we've had several emergencies throughout the district, and so we're still protecting our buildings and servicing our buildings. We're using the school closure time to work on compliance issues, fire life safety issues, and do some of our backflow testing. So great job by our M&PO employees. Environmental and conservation services, they have been remarkable. They have communicated with federal, state, and local agencies on the status of the pandemic and protocols for response. Paul Strauss has been leading that effort as the director of the department, and he's been everywhere at once. So kudos to Paul for all his wonderful work in helping us get through this. They have assisted with the coordination of COVID-19 supply distribution for the district, managed contracts for the sanitation of schools that had possible infection or contamination, including cleanliness testing upon completion. And then they continue to monitor our indoor air quality work to ensure that all our schools remain ready to reopen. Next slide, please. Advancing construction projects. So we have 4 major construction projects ongoing, 24 facility renewal projects, 19 minor projects, and 77 security projects that we have moved forward. And so some of that includes project planning, submitting plans, and permitting. And we're working remotely with our professional consultants. Contract execution continues electronically, and we've completed 135 payments within the last 3 weeks, and I have more to sign to move those forward also. Our building department is continuing construction, our CSIRs, and fire safety inspections. Next slide. Transportation was deployed to support the work. So our drivers have been all over the place in helping the district. I want to applaud them and thank them for their dedication to our district. They have been assisting in transporting food, supplies as needed, organizing volunteers for feeding sites, and in many cases, volunteering themselves. They completed sanitizing all our buses following school closure, and then they repaired a lot of buses and did perform maintenance on many of our buses. So I want to thank them for their effort in doing that. And then in addition, they're making sure that our buses are able to start when we eventually start school. So we're cranking the buses at least weekly. So thank you to all of our transportation folks, and the job well done. Next slide, please. Safety and security of our personnel and facilities. Our school police have been remarkable in effectively managing the COVID-19 pandemic. School police has developed a comprehensive incident action plan for each operational period. Situational summaries and safety briefings, operational overviews, and planned objectives, and they're managing the assignment rosters and criteria for field and administrative personnel. Internally and externally, we continue to participate in many video and telephone meetings to ensure cooperation and consistency with the emergency operations planning and implementation at all levels. Next slide, please. Through the Tactical Operations Center, or TOC, and the police dispatch, we have coordinated COVID-19 response activity with our district partners, various governmental entities, and other key stakeholders. District personnel, we established implemented training and safety protocols for our personnel and facilities to include improved screening and enhanced access control. In addition to providing traditional police services, they've adapted to the new demands associated with the distribution of technology and remote learning issues. Next slide. Along with patrolling and responding to calls throughout the district, school police has ensured the safety and secure distribution of food and technology. School police has adapted to and facilitated shifting demands for facility access from all district and staff and vendors. So they've been everywhere at once, and I want to thank all the brave and wonderful officers for all the work they have done. So so if there are any questions at this time, please feel free. I just want to thank my whole division because they have been superheroes throughout this whole COVID-19 experience, and just have kept themselves upbeat and motivated. And so I just really, my heart goes out to all these wonderful people, and I am just so very proud of them. So I'll take questions at this time.
Mrs. Ball, I want to ask a question. Quite a few parents have asked if the district has the needed supplies to sanitize the buses and the classrooms when we eventually start the schools, when we eventually start school up again, because all of us are trying to find, you can't find Lysol in the stores or basically anything else that supposedly kills the virus. So do we have adequate supplies to make sure that everything is clean and disinfected. Are we using anything special to disinfect the schools? And is there any plans to use an outside company that specializes in disinfecting properties before school starts to go into our schools and help us out with that?
So the answer is yes. We have adequate supply. As a matter of fact, our supplier is bursting at the seams because we haven't taken delivery of some of our summer stock. So yes, we do. We have sanitized. As I said, our custodians did a phenomenal job in doing that. We also have contracts in place that if we need to bring in an outside firm for special circumstances, we have that ability to do that. Again, you know, it's been a moving situation, but we'll be ready to start school.
Thank you. First, Ms. Brill, and then Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Barbieri. And along the same track as Mr. Barbieri's question, the biggest concern of the people I'm talking to in my district right now about going back is, are we going to make sure that all the schools have an adequate supply of antibacterial soaps and also paper towels, because that's been something that's been lacking, and we want to make sure that we have them in classrooms where we're able to, as well as in the bathrooms. And then the parents were also asking me whether their children could carry antibacterial stuff, you know, in their pockets. So that's another question for you.
Our purchasing department has been remarkable in getting us the supplies we need. So I am confident that we'll have everything we need to start school.
Ms. Berg, got a follow-up? Go ahead.
And just as a follow-up, what about allowing them to carry the antibacterial gels and stuff in their pockets? Is that something that we can permit?
I see no reason why we wouldn't, but again, that's something that we have a work group that's forming to talk about what the start of school looks like for us, and trying to map out all of those things that we need to take into consideration. So yes, we'll have hand sanitizer, antibacterial soap in the restrooms and so forth. And we'll make every effort to keep our staff and our students safe.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Andrews, and then Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank Mrs. Paul and the operations group. Many of those workers in your department are essential. So, you know, I was so happy to see that the academies were able to give some of the masks to our healthcare providers. That was great. But I just want to make sure that we have enough personal protection equipment for our essential workers, and certainly looking at masks and protection for those. Many of them haven't stopped. They're still out there working. So can you give me the status? I know we started slow with just a few masks. Where are we now? And are we fully equipped to take care of all of the people?
We are. And again, I want to thank our purchasing department for reaching out and getting us the masks and so forth that we need, and the gloves and so forth. They've been outstanding, Mike Burke and Darcy, and just basically getting us whatever we need. So yes, we do.
Mrs. Andrews, you need to turn your microphone off. I'm sorry. Mrs. Bass turns them off when you have a follow-up question. Turn off your microphone until you're ready for your follow-up question. If you get feedback, you don't do that. Go ahead,
all right. Well, the other question would be the feeding sites. I hear you say we're going down to one. So I just want to know how that works, who selected that one feeding site. I'm really concerned about the feeding sites.
Well, so we're providing meals like we've always done it, but we'll use Monday through Thursday to prep the meals and then provide the meals on Thursday. What has happened is, because we have such a huge volume, we requested refrigerated trucks from the state, and we were waiting for those to arrive. So again, you know, we're trying to limit the contact that our personnel has with the people coming through. And so we feel that by doing this, it still feeds the community, but also protects our employees.
And Mr. Barbieri, if you don't mind me jumping in, we're not reducing it to one feeding site. is one feeding day. So we may actually open more sites in order to accommodate that much food being distributed at one time. So we're not going to one site for the whole district. It's just one day and we'll hand out a week's worth of food.
And part of that planning also is getting ready for our summer feeding sites and expanding the summer or the program and feeding sites. So all of that work is happening now.
Thank you. Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. So first, I just want to talk about the antibacterial soap for a second. So please make sure that the concerned parents realize that the pandemic is a virus. Antibacterial soap is not going to do anything, nothing more than regular soap, right? But also, I would suggest that since we're really all afraid of multiple different things, that maybe we ask one of our partners or School Health Advisory Committee to weigh in on antibacterial soap in the schools. Some of the chemicals that have been used in antibacterial soaps in the past actually present a danger. I'm not sure if all of that is off the market. And there's also still some question about the overuse of other forms of antibacterial soap. And so before we go head first into saying we want to have a lot of antibacterial soap, I think we just need to weigh in on that. Like lots of soap, yes. But the antibacterial part, I have some questions about. But now to the feeding program. So when we cut back to 1 day a week, how many meals per student are we talking about?
So right now it would be 2 meals per day for 6 days. So that's
12
meals.
And so what about any food for the family? Are we partnering still with the other agencies to feed family members?
So we're still working on that plan. That is kind of the direction we want to continue to go. One of the challenges we've had is them having enough volunteers to support their site, but we're still working through that. And, definitely want to thank them for what they've been able to do to help our community.
And my last question at this time is, I was curious to see specific churches that you were working with, looks like specifically in Jupiter. Was that because, was that to fill a void, or because I know a number of churches would raise their hand and say that they want to partner.
I believe those are the ones that reached out to us, and we were able to support it. But again, we've had so much outreach in the form of people and companies donating masks and shields to our food service personnel, coordinated through Ms. Brill. Thank you very much. And so we've just had so much outreach, and it's just astonishing, how much people need at this point. And we're just trying to facilitate whatever we can to ease some of the burden. So again, I want to thank the community for all the great work they've done and helped us through this crisis.
Could I sneak in one more question? When we move to these, this 1 day a week, are we still doing, well, I think we were doing some fresh fruits and vegetables. Are we still doing fresh fruits and vegetables? Are we doing those military rations?
MREs, no ma'am. We're doing, at every opportunity, we're going to do fresh fruits and vegetables. I've lived on MREs, and I would not do that to anyone. So,
okay, thank you.
Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, I just, something that sparked something in my mind. Dr. Robinson and I had an interesting conversation about a month ago about thermometers. And so what I heard her say something, and I want to make sure that we do get access to the health professionals, because when you think about coming back to school, we may have to have a large supply of thermometers on hand. Like if you start paying attention to the rest of the world, masks. And so I think for the board, and obviously Mike Burke, who's trying to juggle all these dollars, But I think I would love to get some sort of real health professional guidance, because if we have to get in line to order massive amounts of masks for our kids, or thermometers, we really need to start getting clear professional guidance on that now, because I'm sure once the orders start going in and you think about the entire country, it's going to be pretty massive. So I really, if Dr. Robinson or other board members, and we'll reach out on our own, can find a group to help us think about getting back to school from a realistic standpoint, and those sort of medical supplies we may need to order in bulk. So it's just something I'm throwing out to the board for consideration.
Thank you. I've got a question for you, Mrs. Paul. Yesterday I spoke with the chamber. Boca Chamber asked me to do one of their virtual meetings, and one of the questions that came up, and I didn't know the answer to: where are we getting all the food? Is it we have the money to buy this food? Is it being given to us by the federal government for distribution, by the state government? Where's all the food coming from?
It's our normal procurement that we do to feed during the year and stuff. So we just place our orders, and the delivery chain hasn't been interrupted, so they continue. So we order literally every week based on what we predict or what we forecast in terms of the number of meals. So it's just through our normal procurement chain.
All right, thank you. I know Mr. Manuel has a question, but I want to ask you one more question first. And probably Mrs. Rico is going to have to chime in on this one. So I know kids were bringing alcohol to school with them, not the kind you drink, but the rubbing alcohol to clean and their parents were giving those alcohol swabs and things. Are we at all concerned about violating the law? I mean, we need to make sure that they can do that, but there's got to be some changes in state law to allow kids to bring those kind of things to school starting in the fall. Then we need to be working with our legislators to approve those kind of things if they currently violate state law to bring those kind of chemicals onto school sites. So can you give us any input on that now or come back to us later, Mrs. Rico?
Thank you. And this is exactly the type of thing that I believe Mr. Oswald and others have referred to in terms of these working groups. There are a number of questions, both for the phase one, the current situation and reacting and embedding these practices and processes. And there's also a current working group looking at the future actions and activities. So all of these questions will be sifted through, and we'll look at what's compliant, what isn't, what needs a new policy, what might need legislative action for a legislative ask. So we will definitely be taking all those into consideration.
All right, thank you. Mr. Manuel, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. Board members, if you put your hand up, watch my face. If I shake my head, I got you. If I don't, I'm looking at the PowerPoint myself, so I might miss you. So make sure you get some reaction from me so I know that so you don't holler at me later. I know Mrs. McQuinn usually sits at the other end of the dais, and I'm always missing her. But now, Mrs. McQuinn, I got to tell you, you're right in the center of my screen, so I can't miss your smiling face. So we're in good shape. Does anybody else have any questions? Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, sir. At this time, I will now turn it over to our wonderful Mike Burke, who we will be leaning on a lot over the next year. So, Mike, you can take it away.
Yes, good afternoon. It's great to see you all. The Finance and IT Division has adapted well to this telework environment. Fortunately, the investments that the board has made over the years in our business systems and technology like PeopleSoft and our SIS and our district portal, they're really paying huge dividends now to make this really possible. Just to give you a feel for the level of productivity going on, I wanted to share some key performance indicators. I think that really tell the story. Our accounts payable team in accounting has paid over 11,000 invoices totaling $57.6 million. That is actually higher than what we've done during the same period of time last year. We've had 2 successful payrolls done remotely, both on April 3rd and April 17th, where we paid over 23,000 employees a payroll of $60 million each, roughly. I'm sure you're all aware, unfortunately, with this kind of unexpected closure of our school facilities, we had a huge volume of canceled trips and events that parents had already paid for students. And so there's a big effort going on now to refund our community. And the schools play a role in that with their treasurer and the principal and the teachers that may have sponsored those events. But we have a group of 7 people that work in our accounting county departments that support the school internal accounts. They're right in the middle of that. They've fielded over 13,000 emails. They've helped process 5,700 refunds, and this number is dated. We continue to do more each day. That totaled 1.2 million. We're working this week with extended learning and the school-age child care directors to issue about 2,000 more refunds for the after-school care program. So very busy again. Our purchasing department has had to switch to this same type of virtual format to negotiate contracts, to hold ITNs. And when you look at your agenda for April 29th, there's over 80 agenda items, a lot of them from purchasing. You're going to see a lot of important construction contracts. And I think that just really tells the story of how hard purchasing is working. You know, I've heard the term hero used multiple times today. I've got to say our IT people are heroes in themselves. They've really pitched in, and I'm really proud of the work they've done to support our academic team with the digital learning effort. And our educational technology team, who was under the academic team, has been exceptional as well. But the IT group, we were handing out over 10,000 computers to our staff and our teachers right before we closed our doors, because we knew we were going to have to be ready for this. And then they've also been a part of that, getting the devices to students' hands, and we're up to over 65,000 now. There is ongoing distribution throughout the month of April that will continue. And one of the other things we're dealing with is the repair of these devices. The last time I checked, we had repaired over 300 devices or replaced them because the device we sent home may have developed an issue, or the family encountered a problem. So that's being taken care of. We ramped up our call center. We were getting a huge volume of calls for IT technical support and help. And we were able to kind of level that workload and bring in more people to help and manage through that. They were returning voicemail messages to make sure everyone got followed up with. But again, just IT has been there every step of the way, and we continue to lean on them heavily. Moving on, I wanted to share, you probably caught this, but we have the Family First Corona Relief Act that was signed into law by the President on March 18th. This really provides 2 new forms of leave related to COVID-19. Our employees are eligible for up to 2 weeks or 80 hours of additional sick leave if they qualify. And there's a rubric of reasons of why you can qualify if how you or your family may have been impacted by the virus. There's also up to 10 weeks of expanded family or medical leave. And there's some caps on that's a paid leave, but it is limited to 2/3 of the employee's earnings are not to exceed $200. So there are some caps. All this had to be programmed into PeopleSoft. We created 2 new electronic forms so the employees can go in and request this leave. We've had about 14 leave requests to date. So not a huge volume because we continue to pay all of our regular employees through the remainder of school year, but we could see this grow, and we're prepared for that. So I have to thank Nancy Samuels, our accounting director. She led this work group. We had a great team from HR, the general counsel's office, ERP, which is PeopleSoft, IT, the data programming, and our budget department, and our risk and benefit management. So and communications to get the word out to our team, our employees. So a great team effort. The only downside about this I have to share with the board is the cost of this leave is going to hit the district. As a public employer, we're not eligible for the tax credits that may help a private employer offset the cost of this. But anyway, it's a good thing for our employees, and we've got that in place. Moving on with the next slide, please. I just wanted to assure the board that we still have our usual annual budget process. We're going to have to do our workshops, obviously, virtually now. You'll have your first one May 20th, but we still have the state truth and millage calendar to satisfy that we must abide by to hold public hearings this summer. And we've got a lot of work to do between now and September 9th, when you'll be asked to adopt the final budget. I'd like to move on to the next slide and just share some thoughts around the budget, because I know everyone's probably a little anxious about the budget, just as I am. And I'm doing all the research possible. I'm part of a weekly CFO call of the State Finance Council, which is 18 CFOs across the state that I've been on for years. And just recently this week, we started a CFO conference call with the Council of Great State Schools that'll be getting together once a week virtually as well. We don't have a lot of information right now. There's different theories on what the legislature may do. You know, they approved their budget on March 19th, but it's yet to be signed by the governor. We've heard theories that the governor may use his veto power to try to balance the budget, or probably more realistically, given the magnitude of this crisis, I suspect that at some point the legislature will have to reconvene for a special session. Now, right now, they don't have a lot of information to go on. They're waiting for really the March and the April sales tax collections to come in that will give them a better gauge. And then they're going to have to make some assumptions around the severity and the duration of this impact to our state's economy. But we know it's significant and it may likely be severe. And our experience with the Great Recession tells us because our state is so heavily dependent on sales tax, unfortunately, that will probably impact education. I know the state has some level of reserves, just as our district does. And so we'll be working through those issues. I do want to share that one of the first things the superintendent did was on March 23rd, we put a comprehensive freeze on all spending and hiring. And there's a waiver process in place to deal with exceptions, but we are doing everything we can to conserve our resources and save money for the remainder of this year because we know we've got budget challenges ahead and we have unforeseen expenses ahead. You know, if we're buying masks or other items to help deal with the reopening, those things are all going to have a cost to them. So, you know, bear with us. We are working hard, and we hope to bring you more information on May 20th, and we'll start working through those issues. And, you know, we're bound to develop a balanced budget, and we will get that done. So with that, I'd open it up for any questions.
Mr. Burke, it seems like we talk about the reserve every year, but we never touch it. I guess the reserve is there for something like this, so that there will be an opportunity or maybe a need to dip into those reserves if we have to spend millions of dollars on masks and other items this year. I mean, are we going to be, where are we currently on our reserve percentage? What percentage of the budget are our reserves at this point?
So the board has their board contingency reserve that's based on your policy of 3% of the budget. That's at $64 million. And then there's, you know, we are trying to conserve resources. I would like to do everything we can to try to address any challenges without having to take that action to hit the contingency reserve. But, you know, if there was ever a rainy day, this might be the time where we have to consider that. You know, we also want to look at ways to reduce our expenditures on a recurring basis because we don't know how really long this could impact us. You know, we're fortunate that for FY20, most of our money has already been received through our local property taxes, and actually the state's transmitted most of the FEFP of their portion of our funding for this year. So we're able to pay all of our employees for the remainder of this school year. But FY21, definite impact, and potentially into FY22 as well. So I think the board's going to have to be really cautious not to depend too heavily on your reserves in the immediate future and be judicious about how we balance that, maybe touching some level of reserves and also making some of those difficult decisions just to reduce our ongoing operating costs.
All right, thank you. Any board members have any questions? Mr. Shaw?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Barbieri. Mr. Burke, yesterday we had a conversation. Can you also share with us related to these costs, what kind of savings have we experienced as a result of the current shutdown, and how can those dollars, because those would be non-recurring expenses that could address some of that question?
Yes, sir. And this is something the superintendent has also asked me to work on, so I can give you an answer. We are saving money. You know, our buses are not running, so we're saving diesel fuel. Our utilities have gone down because we're running the air conditioner at a minimal level just to keep humidity out. And my best estimate, when I go through all that, there are some areas where we're losing revenue, though. Interest revenue is going to drop a little bit. Some of our Medicaid claiming is going to drop. Our school-age child care programs are no longer collecting parent fees. But when the final analysis, when you net all that out, my best estimate right now is about $13.8 million. I would ask the board to cut me some slack, and I'd like to give it really a range of say 10 to 15 million, and hopefully we'll come in a little better, but we are monitoring that daily. And so, you know, 10 to 15 million dollars will be a nice little significant boost that may help pay for some of those one-time costs we could see in the fall, whether it's hand sanitizer or mask or what have you, or thermometers. So again, and I attribute, you know, the hiring freeze is also helping to save money. We're getting by. We're not using day-to-day substitute teachers any longer. So there's a full analysis, and I'll share that with the board on May 20th in more detail, but we're watching that very closely.
right, I couldn't get my microphone to come back on. Mrs. Andrews, I saw you next. Mr. Shaw, did you have a follow-up? No? No? Mrs. Andrews and Mrs. Whitfield, I believe. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
Mrs. Whitfield and Dr. Roberts. Go ahead, Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. And I would love to thank all of our many supporters. Many of them have given us a lot of funding. The Education Foundation, some individuals have given us money. Is there any way we can know a little bit about it? Because I know we got an abundance of computers that came through the Educational Foundation. Is there any way for us to actually get some information about how that money was spent, where did it go, and how many schools actually benefited from technology or other areas based on their giving, their generous giving?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up. Those devices that we continue to distribute many of them are now funded through some of those generous donations. IT's kept a whole record of that. We've had both devices given to us to hand out, as well as cash or check donations where we in turn are buying devices. But it's been significant, and there's been hundreds of devices deployed, and it's just been nice to see that has been a great help and worked very well. So the Ed Foundation continues to impress me with their efforts. James has really beat the bushes, I think, to get people excited to help us and get the checks in. And as soon as we get the money, we place the orders. Now, we've been successful to date, but there is some challenge. Chromebooks is one of the hot items now there was a disruption in the supply chain. So we're able to kind of get them, but we'll probably have a bigger order going into next year that we need to get placed relatively soon to make sure we get them in time.
Just to follow up, Mr. Barbieri.
Go ahead, Ms. Sanders.
Yes, I would like that because many of us are interfacing on different kinds of remote calls with these individuals from our communities. So with this list, we can personally thank them, and share with them our gratitude for what they're doing for our children.
I agree, and I think it'd be worthy of a board presentation at some point where we try to give credit.
Mrs. Whitfield, I believe you're next. Dr. Robinson, when I said your name, you shook your head no. So if you're not. Okay, Mrs. Whitfield, then Dr. Robinson.
Mine really briefly. I just wanted to ask what the impact of handing out 63,000 computers is on the budget. Is that something you're starting to think about? If we have to replace those in the future, I'm assuming they're going to be somewhat used over this time.
Yes. So these devices, the Chromebooks we buy are about $300 each. So 60,000 is about $18 million worth of devices sitting out there. We hope to bring them back, just like we bring back textbooks each year. And, we can make provisions to have those devices sanitized as well. I'm realistic in that we probably will not, they may not all come back, or they may not all be in working order. We'll have to work through that. But those were devices that we had on hand already within the district. So the next challenge will be buying new devices to potentially backfill some of the ones lost. And then also this experience of going to digital learning or online learning, really, I think it's going to probably put the pressure on us to expedite our movement to a one-to-one device program. And unfortunately, the capital budget does have some challenges and limitations, but we may have to reset our priorities around the capital budget this year to buy more devices. And that's going to probably wind up with some choices. It's tough when you look at the capital budget because you're talking about computers versus maintenance or HVAC work. They're all things that really we need to do, but we're going to bring some recommendations forward with our best thinking to address the most pressing priorities first.
Mr. Superintendent, before Dr. Robinson, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, so we, to Ms. Andrews' point, all those wonderful donations from the Ed Foundation, the Economic Council, a lot of private individuals, we have been acknowledging them in the letter. I think it would be a good idea to put a board item so that the board can acknowledge all of those people individually. I think it's also important to recognize that Mike has we all have a huge job, but we're also trying to figure out this budget and prepare for the reality of hurricane season as well, which is, I know people don't want to talk about that, but that's a reality for us as well, is how we prepare for that. I think it's also important, I think to Ms. Whitfield's point, the IT team under Mike is so amazing. We're actually able to track where all of our devices are in the county. We can literally, they can pull up software and they know where all of these machines are. So, you know, it's amazing what we've been able to do in short order. So I just wanted to add that as part of Mike's presentation.
Thank you. Dr. Robinson, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad Mrs. Andrews brought that up because we should thank people. I have a tendency to overlook that little detail. So thanks for bringing that up. But what I wanted to say before we start spending the money that's been saved or dipping into the reserve is we have to have a plan. And I know that this is probably in some of these work groups, right? But before we start taking any action as a board, we need to discuss the plan. What does school look like? What's the structure of our school system for the delivery of educational services at the other side of this crisis, right? Because this is an opportunity to improve what we've been doing, to make sure that we are, with all intentionality, meeting the needs of the children and adults whose needs we haven't been meeting. So I don't want us to start whittling away at whichever source of funding unless it's an emergency, of course, but until we have a plan. And I think now is the time. And so I guess maybe I'm looking for reassurance from the superintendent that you have a work group that is looking at a new and improved delivery model.
Yes, ma'am, we do. And we do have a work group working on that. I think that was the other reason why we worked so hard up until this point to have a successful board meeting, because we're going to have to be in this together to talk about whatever future expenditures are. So Mike and I have been meeting privately, and we'll continue to meet one-on-one with our legislators and the different resources that we have. But you're absolutely right. Before we start writing big checks, we have to talk as a team. And so we have a team working on that, and we will try our best to continue to update the board on our plans. But also, I think, even though right now we've scheduled board meetings through May, I think into June, if we need to bring workshops on in between, if we get through this meeting successful, then we know we have a platform that allows us to conduct that business.
I'd just like to share a couple more thoughts before, if we're done with my questions. But there has been some federal stimulus, the CARES Act, that has provided some federal funding for K-12 schools. There's $13.5 billion. Our share of that in Palm Beach County, we expect to be about $37.5 million. So that'll be one source to probably use to help backfill some of the state budget reductions. There's a smaller pot of money that the district may get a share of to help address the COVID-19 slide and some of those things. And we hope to get a share of that. But my bigger point is that while $13.5 billion sounds like a lot of money, those of you that went through the Great Recession with us and may recall the ERA funding, that provided $100 billion for K-12 schools. And Palm Beach's share of that money was over $200 million. The Council of Great State Schools has recently put some letters together to try to start raising awareness and some outreach for more K-12 money in the next rounds of stimulus. And I really think that's going to be essential to our success and our survival to some extent, that more money is put behind that effort for K-12 schools. The immediate impact to the economy is unprecedented, and then the duration kind of remains a little bit of a mystery. But yeah, I'm really thinking that should be one of our priorities too, that we start pushing and looking for some relief at the federal level. And I think that if there's no more questions, that would wrap up the finances for now.
Mr. Superintendent, one question for you. So, and follow up to Dr. Robinson, you and I have had some brief discussions on this, but I think we all probably realize that come fall, if this thing is not really under control, that we're going to have quite a few parents who are going to say, I'm not sending my kid back to the classroom. I want to keep my computer at home. And so I hope your work group is looking at how we do a blended model, because I don't know how a teacher can teach kids in her classroom as well as teach kids that are not in her classroom that should have been in her classroom, but the parents don't want to send them. So we need to be prepared for that, because I don't think you have to be a fortune teller to try and figure out that might very well happen if parents are concerned about sending their kids back into the classroom. So
yes, sir. So I mean, it may have been about 2 weeks ago where I woke up in the middle of the night and realized if this thing may be real, or we have some sort of hybrid or blended model on August. And so Mr. Oswald and Dr. Sheffield have begun that work. There will be multiple workshops for the board as we start to, work through that plan. I think the hardest part for all of us, and I think everyone on this call, on this meeting, realizes this, that information changes almost every day. And so as we get the planning, and once we close out the school year and we start working on the summer in the fall, a lot of it is going to be predicated on the whole social distancing thing. So yes, we're working on it, but I want to be clear that those plans probably won't be solid until the first day we show up, because of just all the different information that's coming at us. But yes, we are working on that. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mrs. Andrews, and then Dr. Roberts.
And thank you. As we continue for the remainder of this year, as well as what's going to happen for our return and the planning process and these work groups, do we have teacher involvement in any of that, the CTA, or just regular teacher involvement with all of these work groups?
Yes, this is certainly allowable. The heads of those work groups are typically regionals and instructionals, and they've been given direction to include principals. They have a very diverse group of people on those work groups. And so I know you have a couple now around graduation items. And so yes, those principals and others are creating committees of diverse groups of people to work through them. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Fenoy, that does include teachers also, right?
As I understand it, yes. But we'll check on that to make sure. If not, we'll get them in there.
All right, any more comments, Burke? Thank you, Mr. Burke. What happened to your beer? I was going to have company here, so.
There's a whole story behind that, but basically Claudia Shea told me to clean up my act, I think. So.
But I never listened. Dr. Robinson, I'm sorry. I think you did have your hand up. You have another question for me?
Yeah, it's not a question. It's really two comments. So one, in response to the Mrs. Andrews' question about teachers being involved. So in my magical world, then the work group that is working on these, what I call the grade level essentials, the narrow curriculum, would have teachers, especially the teachers who would be receiving the students. So for example, if you're doing the second grade social studies essentials, then the third grade teachers need to look in on that and make sure that is what they know the children need to come to third grade to be successful, right? As the narrowed focus on what they need. But the other thing in terms of this, the work group that's looking at what I'm labeling as the restructuring of the delivery of education model, is I hope that we are looking at the children that we purport to serve and educate, and the adults that educate and serve them, and what their needs are, because we know that we have been missing children. We have significant numbers of children that we have failed to engage, and so I hope that we will not try to create a new delivery model that's just walking down the middle again, but that it is working specifically to meet the needs of like each group of children, so that there's a place for everybody, including those who don't want their children to come back, who want to do virtual education. And I would suggest that maybe we sometime in the relatively near future have a workshop on our Palm Beach Virtual. I want to thank the staff at Palm Beach Virtual for walking me through the comparisons and contrasting of what they do to what we are doing on this humongous scale all of a sudden. And I could just tell you that, at least in my mind, Palm Beach Virtual is good for some, but of course not all, right? And so I just want us to, I'm going to use a cliche as much as I hate cliches, and begin with the end in mind. And the end is that we actively engage each student to be an active participant in their own education, so that they could be successful not only academically, but socially and behaviorally and every other way. But I don't want us just redeveloping the system for the system. I want us to redevelop it, recreate it for the children.
Yeah, I would just like to add to that. I think this experience has proven that our district is the premier education provider in Palm Beach County. And I think our enrollment's going to be very critical to the budget as well. And this is an opportunity to hopefully hang on to the students we have and bring in more students out of private school, home education, charter, wherever. Again, the superintendent's back now. I didn't see him for a second, but I know he's tasked us with that, what the future is going to look like in education and how we make that work for everyone. So, but we're best positioned to do it, right? And for our county, so it's our job to do.
All right, any more questions for Mr. Burke? Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, before Julianne Rico, our General Counsel, proceeds, I want to share with the board how in short order, we already had a really good working relationship, but we would not be where we are today if it wasn't for the Office of General Counsel and that entire team. The level of synergy is amazing and it's getting better and better every day. So, Julianne and I have a lot of private laughs and a lot of private cries dealing with the board and everything else we deal with, but I just had to give her that public shout out because we have done a lot because of her and her team. Always thinking about worst case scenario. So it helps us. Julianne?
You guys actually cry when you're dealing with the board?
Yeah, but out of happiness. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for that, Dr. Fenoy. And it's reciprocal. We have worked hand in glove in this brief presentation. We'll outline some of the areas that we have worked together and continue to work together. This report is really based on, a date of March 19th, which is when the Office of General Counsel went 100% remote. And we started from day one to begin developing some of the reports that you all have recently received with respect to planning the work and executing the work. So our work plan was really based and developed on structure and accountability for our legal services, but also, as Dr. Fenoy said, to support the ongoing work and the incredible job that the district has been able to do and all of the reactivity that had to occur when this crisis came upon us. So all of our employees are functioning, fully engaged to assure that the work is effective, efficient, and responsive. And we essentially created a working paradigm within our department to look at 3 buckets of work. One is COVID-19 response issues. The other is the ongoing work, because we still have the ongoing work of the legal services that are required of the district. Next slide. And also we began to look at some initiatives that became clear to us that we might be able to tackle as it has been enlightened by this crisis. So we began a tracking process to track the emergency executive orders, regulations, and other legislation from numerous agencies and jurisdictions, which were ever evolving. You can continue to hear that recurring theme, and we're going to continue to track those and process through those and provide you with those updates. We also developed a process to identify decision points and systems, and that's sort of the first bubble up, or where some of these decisions bubble up. And they then interface with the working groups that you've heard so much about during these various presentations. And so we are also processing a tracking mechanism for our own work. So all of the assignments relative to the COVID related issues have been tracked in one sort of working document so that we can keep track of those for future reference. We have been working closely with the district teams and providing rapid response to all of these challenges: HR, business operations, governance, much of the work of getting these virtual board meetings, advisory board meetings, developing special policies, and just the process for bringing this stuff forward has gone on in the governance group. We have a working academics group, and then litigation, claims, and risk avoidance. We've collaborated with other professional partners. There are just lots and lots and lots of listservs and calls and conference calls that we have engaged in, including the Florida School Board Attorneys Association, Council of School Attorneys, for which I serve as an executive officer, National School Board Association, and the like. So we also have been in communication with private and public sector attorneys and colleagues. Many of the private law firms have provided ongoing information about how they see and react to some of these ongoing issues, and have provided that information as a courtesy, and we have certainly appreciated that. So with our ongoing work, we continue to review and handle ongoing matters in the normal course of business, including contracts. All of these data points are, continuing to evolve. Duty calls, these are calls from the district administrators and principals. IEP hearings have gone on through these Google methodologies and otherwise. Policy development with our normal policy development, due process hearings, state complaints, ESC team leader meetings, and the like. With respect to litigation, it's been an interesting challenge because the courts have also had to react. The various courts, including DOA, federal and state courts, have all had to react and issue their own executive orders, all of which continue to change as we progress through the last several weeks. And we have conducted at least one DOA hearing virtually. Court hearings have been ratcheted down to basically essential type hearings, but that does not mean that our ongoing cases have stopped. The courts still expect discovery to go on. Most deadlines have not been extended, and so the Office of General Counsel has continued with the litigation team to move forward with over 11 trials in preparation that are scheduled to take place between April and July of 2020. We've also created a new process for receiving lawsuits and service of process and subpoenas due to the closure of the buildings. And so we had to create a new process for administering that. So our federal and state litigation activity, we've had over 18 hearings, 17 depositions, 6 mediations. We've filed over 150 pleadings. We've had 8 new cases, 56 new claims, 4 settlements, and I'm happy to report we won 2 major appeals in this last month, one of which ruling just came out today. And those are appeals that had significant exposure and interest of not only our district, but statewide impact. So we've had quite a bit of activity in regard to the personnel specific matters. You'll hear from not only when you heard from Mr. Burke, but Dr. LaCava over all of the challenges and ever evolving issues as respecting our workforce. So this is just a small list of the issues that have been we've been dealing with, reviewing, and working on with respect to our employees, and we will continue working with our district team to come up with and provide proper and compliant systems. Business interruptions have been, a continued theme, not only with respect to our district, but across the board in all areas of business, public and private. Business interruptions, have had to be addressed in a very new and unique way. So our staff has been working again hand in hand to try to address how we deal with business interruptions, projects, contracts, events, and the like. And so we continue to work through that. We also have had an opportunity to address some special initiatives. So we're working through a new process for the contract review, submittal, and legal review process throughout the district. So this has given us an opportunity to really require an automated contract preparation, review, and sign-off procedure, because there's no one there to receive an actual physical contract anymore. So this has given us a great opportunity to do that. And our charter school attorneys have worked and continue to initiate with the district charter school department an overview of the policies and procedures. And this includes the finance department of things that really needed to be looked at in a global and specific strategic way with respect to our charter school policies. So that's ongoing. So with that, again, I would just like to commend the district for reacting, implementing, and really working through all of the challenges. Our counterparts write to us every single day about, the challenges their districts are facing. And I think we've met these in an incredible way, and we continue to do so. Thank you.
Board members, any questions? Thank you, Mrs. Rico. I think I've talked to you more in the last week than I talked to you in the last 6 years, but thank you for all that you've been doing to keep us from getting into trouble. Mr. Superintendent?
At this time, I'll turn it over to our Chief of Human Resources, Dr. LaCava, for his division's update. And again, another team that's working hard. I mean, we got to keep the business of the district running, but we also have to be mindful of the realities of our employees. And so they've really been sensitive around that and really trying to work through it. I've even seen, I didn't think I'd see the day where the Office of General Counsel and Human Resources would work so closely, but they sure are now. So at this time, I turn it over to Dr. LaCava.
Good afternoon, School Board Chair Barbieri, School Board and Superintendent. I just want to echo that of the superintendent, but it just hasn't been legal. It's been, the finance department, and it's been, the academics department, and anybody that we've picked up the phone to ask questions. They've been so flexible, and they've been so quick to really help us, with so many projects that are going on. And as you may know, over the last month, the Division of Human Resource has changed the way we do work. And a lot of our employees in the beginning struggled with working remotely. And we've had to work through that as well. And one more piece that has been very important, and I just want to make sure everybody understands, is that I've been reaching out to other chiefs, superintendents, chief of human resources, and I've been part of a lot of meetings, just like many board members have, council and Chiefs for Change, and you name it, and they're all having similar issues, right? They're all having rapid changes, and they're all going through this process that we're doing so well. And a lot of people are really looking up to us to share those processes that all these teams have put together as well. But through the challenges, our team has adapted well, and I truly believe they're very, very flexible. So let me just share a couple of things in regards to what HR is doing up to this point. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that Mike and Julianne have said because they're so entangled, right? Families first, and a lot of the financing pieces that are really impacting HR. But it's been business as usual in HR. Our folks are moving the work forward. We're meeting timelines, some controversial, some we've had to be flexible with. The professional development and leadership, they're supporting leaders throughout the district. Professional development has rolled up their sleeves and working with the professional development of teachers and working through this remote environment as well. Carlene Millen, the fearless leader of professional growth, is also working her magic through the work, right? And she's doing a lot of the pieces that need to move forward, such as the administrative assistance resources that the board received and onboarding, all these pieces of work that we just can't stop because we have a major pandemic. And so they've been working through that as well. Also, our recruitment and retention department and our HR partners are helping our principals understand this hiring freeze that Mike mentioned earlier in his slides. This is a very difficult time for them because they haven't seen something like this since 2008. But we are answering questions, we're supporting them, we're walking these challenges with them, and we're just going to continue to have these conversations with them through the future of hiring as well. Also, our reappointment process, something that we have worked closely with legal, and we have worked closely with a lot of individuals. We are moving that work along as well, and an FAQ is going to be pushed out to principals and board members and everybody so they understand and have the answers, and we can be as transparent as possible during these challenging times as well. So also in collaboration with labor and legal, we've created an emergency predetermination process. It has really built in some flexibility for our employees in regards to our disciplining issues, and meetings with board members have been scheduled, and I know some of you already accepted to kind of go through that document as well. In addition, our division is working through the myriad of information that is coming from the Department of Education around teacher evaluations, the certification. There's a lot of deadlines, a lot of language change. The one thing that I want to push out and bring up is that a lot of our teachers are benefiting from that teacher certification examination, where our state has waived the fees. So that's a great thing. Great and bad, right? Because the great thing is a lot of people are moving forward with getting these tests, and now we have a backup as well. So the state's going to have to work through that piece as well. Also, the payroll piece that Mike mentioned earlier. Did I drop off? Yep, there you go. I'm back. Mike mentioned earlier that our payroll is working through all these processes, salary agreements, payroll. We're making sure that everybody's getting paid on time, especially. This is the last thing that they need during these challenging times, not to have a on-time paycheck. So kudos to them as well. Also, our division is also conducting environmental scans of the district, of our department, just to really get a grasp of what it's going to look like, you know, in a couple of months, in a year, and 3 years from now. And so we're being very diligent in understanding that and really painting the picture for our leaders as well as the schools. And finally, in order for us to start looking at how we get back to a normal work schedule, we are working with legal and other departments, risk and transportation and operations, on how do we address the development of protocols to get us going back to work, and also dealing with this future pandemic and maybe another one in the future, right? And hopefully not, but we want to make sure that we have the answers when employees want to get back to work or they're being asked to go back to work, and we have the right protocols in place for that as well. So with that, I want to make sure that everybody understands that we have challenges that are going to continue to arise, and HR is going to be ready. And the last thing I wanted to mention, and I think the slide's already there, is that we have a group of individuals that have been really helping out the district, and this is our HR Customer Care Center. And I wanted to end in a positive note. These individuals, along with the Department of Communication, have been working collaboratively really to answer questions of our staff in these uncertain times. And this branch of HR has put in place to ensure that staff members get the answers to many issues and concerns. We've had over 2,500 calls so far since March 15th, and that's huge for a team of 5. And they're working from home, they're answering calls, they're emailing back, and a lot of these concerns are around substitutes, unemployment, job status, contract questions, and many, many, many more issues. Again, for the staff that's listening, teachers and people that are listening to this virtual board meeting, if you have questions or if you have concerns, the number you can call is 434-8777. Again, 434-8777, and we'll be there to answer those questions. Again, I want to thank Dr. Fenoy, Mr. Barbieri, and the school board for its leadership during these challenging times. So with that, I'll open up to questions regarding anything that I've said in my presentation.
Mrs. McQuinn, then Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. Dr. LaCava, through the superintendent, in terms of the reappointment process, and I am not referring to not referring to classroom teachers. Nobody has a clue what's going to happen with students returning. I think our students will return and will pick up even more. That's not just a hope, it's what I really think. But if I remember correctly from the old days, the reappointment, I'm referring to administrative positions, whether they're non-school-based administrative positions. Does it still say that you will be reappointed to the same or similar position? I'm really looking to whether, if we are in dire financial straits, are we promising now that all positions non-school based will be reappointed?
So that's a great question. So legal, Mike, various portions of HR are looking into this right now, balancing what could happen with our budget how do we address this, the multiple and the diverse contracts that we have. So we've invited Vicki and legal to look into this. So we should have more answers in the coming days. We've been looking at this for about a week and a half. So this is a very complicated one, and I'm not going to lie about it. I'm going to be as transparent as possible because we just don't know enough to really give out answers at this moment, but we are looking at that.
All right, Mrs. Andrews.
My question ties into the voluntary transfer period. I'm sure that we're already in it. It could be over with right now. And how is our work with the Classroom Teachers Association based on all of these uncertainties? Everything's fluid right now, and we don't know. We have a hiring freeze on. I'm sure we may need to hire people. We may not. What are we doing in collaborations with them and talking through ideas, looking at what's going on in other districts? What are we doing?
Yep, great question, Mrs. Andrews. I just left Mr. Katz a voicemail yesterday in regards to a question that he had, and he's been reaching out to Miss Vicki Park. And I can tell you our communication needs to continue to improve with the CTA. I think that they have a lot of ideas that they can share in regards to whether it's a voluntary process or whether it's class size amendments. But we are reaching out to him and various unions as well. In regards to the voluntary transfer period, it's still open through Friday, May 8th. So we're still continuing to place those individuals. I think we only have about 57 teachers that are in the voluntary transfer process or pool. But you're absolutely right. We need to continue to reach across and work with our unions and work with Mr. Katz and just kind of share ideas and see what other ideas they have as well. But I'll get back to you in regards to once I've had more opportunities to share and vet and start thinking about this with you, Mrs. Andrews, and the board.
Thank you. Ms. Andrews, you have any follow-up on that one?
Yes, I did have a follow-up.
Right.
I did have a follow-up. Yeah, I do want you to look at the Council of Great City Schools and look at many of the other districts, stimulus-sized like us, from the state of Florida as well as across the nation. They have actually plugged in agreements as it relates to professional development, the hiring process, and so on. So there are some models already out there, and you could very well check with some of those folks to see how it's working.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Breaux?
Thank you. And this is okay? Some feedback there. Do you hear me?
It's working.
Oh, okay. So this is the time of year where we're quickly nearing where we celebrate our retirees. And so along the same lines as we're looking at graduations, I hope that you are looking at a way that we can celebrate those employees who are leading our district. I think it's important that we recognize them. So that would be my ask. I know you have a lot on your plate, but we do need to find a way to recognize them.
We have already started a work group on that. I wouldn't call it a work group officially. It's just a group of individuals that are looking into that. And we're trying to see if we mirror the retirement to what we're doing with students. So we have some alignment and, bringing out their pictures, celebrating that. So that's just one idea of many, but we are looking at that last week. So we should have something soon.
All right, are there any other questions from any board members? Dr. Robinson, go ahead.
Thank you. This is nothing unique to this crisis we're in, but have we figured out how to fix that issue with the background checks so that we don't offer people positions before the background check?
Yes, well, we haven't solved it all. The first thing that we did is that we reduced it from 1 year. If they falsify or they may not understand the application, we've gone from 1 year to 60 days now where they can reapply. The second thing that we're doing is we're going to an electronic application, and there's going to be a video that explains to them specifically what they need to do, why we're requiring this. So the script is being worked through. And then there's some other pieces that we are working through to make sure that this fits and we have less people, not filling out the application correctly. The second part of that question is we're working with our recruitment and retention side, which is our technicians, and also our Vicki and labor to make sure that when a person is given a, the word evades me, but
Offer.
an offer. Thank you very much. Is given an offer, the criminal background check and the offer coincide, so there's no overlap. They don't start first, and we have to pull them out. So those are the things that we've been working through virtually. Some more information will be coming forward, and once we have everything together, I will sit down with every board member and go through the idea that we have and listen to your feedback.
Okay, may I follow up on that?
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Robinson.
So I just want to be crystal clear. So I think you know, but I just want to be redundant. The problem I'm trying to solve is I don't want people quitting the job that they have, thinking that they have a job at the school district, and then the background check comes back and there's some real or imaginary disqualifier, right? So from what you said, like the video and every instruction needs to basically say, don't quit your day job.
Okay. And
unless we're going to move the background check up to before we offer the position. And so I don't want to belabor this. I just want to be clear what my concern is.
Yeah, and then the other piece that I just want to share is there's going to have to be some education for our school-based leaders, because, you know, they're not going to be getting to the school until everything is completed. So once it's completed, they'll get them. So there may be a delay, so we may get other concerns later on. But yes, we're just going to continue to work through that, Dr. Robinson.
Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. And virtual interviewing and processing is not new for HR. It's been going on for years. How are we building a pool of quality people? I don't know how many we'll need, but as we kind of look at our situation, what's your plans for making sure that you have a quality pool of people ready through the virtual process?
Yes, first of all, the virtual interviews is ready to go. Whether we choose to move forward with it, we really are looking, you know, we have the screening process ready to go. We have the interviewing process ready to go virtually. That's not a problem. We've tested it. We're ready to go. In regards to what we're going to be looking for in the future, that's also a question that Mike Burke and myself have been looking at, because we have 20 million people unemployed. So we might be looking at very, very little, vacancies in the near future. So we started really looking at an environmental scan and how we're going to be able to place quality people in our hard-to-staff schools, hard-to-staff subjects, in different areas. So we've started to look at that. We're starting to develop that plan. But again, we're waiting to see what our budget's going to look like. Class size amendment, will there be some tweaks to that? Yes, Mrs. Andrews.
Go ahead, Mrs. Andrews.
Just to follow up with the bus drivers too, you know, we don't know if people will want to come back. It's going to be a difficult time ahead. And the normal recruitment of having people come in and fill out forms, what's the plan for those non-instructional people, such as your bus drivers, transportation, and maintenance folks?
So we really have, well, let me just back up. We've really been looking at the instructional side, but Gail Williams and the non-instructional side of the house has already built a workforce planning structure prior to the pandemic, and now she's adapting it to what it's going to look like now during a virtual and remote hiring process. So she's working on that. I'll bring more information forward once we have a little bit tighter, more information, a little bit tighter.
All right, thank you, Dr. LaCava. Is there anybody else have any questions for him? Okay, Mr. Superintendent. Thank you, Dr. LaCava.
Thank you.
Sir, so at this time, we'll turn it over to our final presentation of the day, which is our Office of Chief of Staff, and this will be done about communications. So Claudia Shea, our wonderful Director of Communications, who has been working very hard like the rest of us. But let me say this too, I think a lot of what she's going to present is around graduations, and as you know, I had to make one of the toughest decisions I had to make, which was to cancel in-person graduations. But I was very clear, and I'll say again for the record, that what we're presenting today is what we 100% know we can do, but we have left that door open for if the social distancing guidelines and things change during late summer or even as late as December, if the board, if it's their will and pleasure, because it certainly would be mine, if all things are safe, we will move forward with that. But at this time, Claudia will be sharing the work to date as it relates to communications in the Chief of Staff's office.
Okay, thank you for that introduction, Dr. Fenoy, and good afternoon to Chairman Barbieri and Vice Chair, Mr. Chuck Shaw, and the entire board. It's nice to see your faces again all together. So communications has been very, very busy supporting all of the great work that you just heard about from all of the various departments, and also disseminating all of that information and the resources that is coming out of those departments. It's been a joy to work almost closer than ever with these departments. Even though we're in isolation, I feel like we're more in unity than ever before and more in step with this common cause. Dr. Fenoy and the Chief of Staff, Mr. Ed Tierney, have been very, very deliberate in stressing to the entire communications team the really critical importance of continued, timely, concise communication right now with our staff, with our students, with our parents, with our community overall, because right now, as we know, the situation is constantly changing, and there's the risk of a whole lot of amount of confusion if we don't stay on top of this. So we have pretty much changed the way we deliver customer service, and one of the most impactful actions taken by communications was the launch of what you're seeing right here. Now, this is a coronavirus information hotline, which communications launched on March 12th. Now, this is in addition to the helpline that Dr. LaCava told you about just a few moments ago. What you see right there is we have people separating so that they're safe, and they were working from 8 a.m. every day until about 4:30 in the back of the cafeteria, never complaining, always so comforting with whomever called them. We had a lot of support in this effort from transportation, who helped bring us employees to staff this, also multicultural. We took thousands upon thousands of phone calls over the past 5 weeks, and we were able to answer them in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. And it's really interesting, the evolution of the calls. So this, as I mentioned, started on March 12th, which was the day before Dr. Fenoy made the decision to start closing our schools. So you can imagine how the tone and the questions changed over the 5 weeks. So it went from uneasiness about, will our schools close, to, okay, now our schools are closed, what happens next? How do I educate my child? How do I get a device? And then this is where IT and ET were so busy handing out all those devices. We got calls from parents who were worried about how their children were going to eat, and then food service stepped in, and transportation, getting those meals out there to the point where you heard Ms. Paul mention a little bit ago, 1 million meals as of last week. It's just been tremendous. So even before we launched that, we launched a dedicated website right here. It was the coronavirus website. This was our first one, and this remains active today. And this deals with wellness, emotional support, anything related to the health and welfare of our parents, our staff, our students. There were also lessons to help parents work with their children if they were stressed out about the threat of coronavirus and what it might mean to their family, a brain pop about what coronavirus even is. And it was all just presented in such a way. We worked with Safe Schools and many other departments to make sure that it was very consumer friendly and easy to digest, and nothing was overwhelming. And to this day, we still update it, as you see a little photo right there with Governor DeSantis. He continues to do media updates, video updates every single day, and so that's replaced daily. Now, from there, we launched this website, which is our distance learning website. And I know Mr. Barbieri asked me at one point, why do you have these two websites? And the reason why is we want everything to be as simple as possible for everyone. Okay, now we've kind of moved past most of the coronavirus information, the health information, but we wanted parents who are now home with their children, as their children are getting their distance learning instruction, to have a very easy to navigate, one-stop shopping place for all of their questions. So as you see on there, you click into the Google Classroom. Students who want to click into the portal are able to do it there. There's also information here about if you want free tutoring. We're working with the local libraries with that. We have ESC information. We have the TV schedule, how you can watch all of your programs on TV throughout the day. The TV schedule runs from 8:55 every day. That's where we start pre-K instruction, and goes all the way to 4:30 every day, and that usually ends with the secondary. But that's been very, very successful and very popular. And we also made sure we were very deliberate in making sure that the TV programming that you see is streamed live for people who don't have DirecTV. It's on Comcast for people who use Comcast and have basic cable. Channel 12 really stepped up for us and gave us one of their channels, 12.2, for people who have a TV they plug into the wall and they just use their rabbit ears. And of course, we have our partners with AT&T Uverse, and they also are providing our programming every day. So that's just been very, very successful. Both of these web pages have also been, as I mentioned, available in multiple languages. They're not just, you click a button and it translates. Our translators have actually gone through and have translated everything, and they've modified their individual websites to maybe be more relevant to different members of our community and their specific questions. So a lot of this information is based on the questions that we're getting, whether it be via our phone calls or whether it be through social media or on our website. So we're trying to be really deliberate and really impactful right there. These two sites, it's just astonishing to me. Since they both launched, they've had more than 1 million hits. So people are definitely coming to us for information, and that makes me feel good. I've been asked by a lot of people throughout the country about these sites and how we set them up and how we made decisions on content. The decisions on content was made by collaborating with people throughout our district. What was most important? Okay, now this brings us to one of the headlines Dr. Fenoy mentioned when he was addressing the whole idea of virtual graduations. Virtual graduations will be running from May 26th through June 5th. What we're doing is we're broadcasting all of these graduations on TV. Also, they'll be streaming live so people can watch that way. And they all start after 5 p.m., including the ones on Saturdays, just to keep it consistent. And our thought process there was, well, first of all, we still have the classroom scheduling going on throughout the day, and that ends at about 4:30, as I mentioned. And this way at 5 o'clock, we can start clean with our graduations. We've allotted about an hour and a half for each graduation. We have a little bit of wiggle room in there. On that website, you'll also see how you can watch. It's palmbeachschools.org/graduation, easy to remember. And on that site, you'll also find out how to have a watch party. So how this will work is if up to 250 people want to start their own site, kind of like we're doing right now, but have 250 of their closest friends and family members, they can all watch together and they can see reactions as a name is called, as a speech is read. So it is the next best thing to being there. So how does a virtual graduation look? If we go to the next slide, I'll give you an idea. Now, every graduation, and we have more than 30 graduations, so it's a lot of work, but it's a labor of love. So each graduation will be unique. So it's not a cookie cutter, but there is a general rundown. And just like traditional graduations, in every graduation, you'll be hearing from that school's principal. You'll be hearing from that school's valedictorian, salutatorian. You'll be hearing from the superintendent. You'll also be hearing from our board members. You all will be represented in this as well. We are also using photos from yearbooks. So we have lifestyle photos in there, so kids will see that. And we've also asked each school to create, if they haven't already, a video which is pretty much like a year in review, just the highlights of life at their school over the school year, something that they can all reflect back on. So we're trying to make it as fun as possible. Those schools that want to give us their own national anthem that they might have recorded their band playing, that's great. If they want to do their own pledge, that's great too. So we are just, again, making them all look unique and trying to make every school and every student feel special. Even though this isn't as great as being there in person, it's the next best thing. So children will still have their names called just like they do at regular traditional graduations. In fact, we've asked every school to have the person who would have been reading the names record the names. And then what we're doing is over every name, we're putting that child's photo from the yearbook. If that child missed yearbook day and photos, we're asking them to give us photos so we can put that in there. And we're just trying to make it a lot of fun. And as Dr. Fenoy mentioned, this is really important. I think that there was a misunderstanding with some parents that we're doing this instead. We're doing this because this is the only safe way to recognize this milestone in children's lives right now. They're just about to cross the finish line, and how fabulous is it for them to be celebrated in this manner? And then if we don't have to social distance down the road towards the end of the summer, well, as Dr. Fenoy said, then principals who've been very vocal about wanting to keep that door open, and Dr. Fenoy who's been adamant about keeping that door open, well, then we can do that too. And I will promise you that communications will be there every step of the way to do what we can to also promote those graduations and make children feel special once again. So yeah, they are missing out on what everyone else has had in the years before. But I think and I hope that they know that we're trying our best and we will make this a labor of love. Dr. LaCava mentioned that he's had calls from colleagues at the Council of Great City Schools. As soon as Dr. Fenoy put out his 2 updates to parents and seniors about what we were doing with these virtual graduations, communications got calls because we were one of the first to announce this. And so everybody wants to know, how are you putting this together? How are you making it unique? And there's a lot of brainstorming going on. And now it's, of course, not just here in our district, it's across the country. It's not just in high schools, it's in colleges, it's in dental schools and law schools. So it's just the way that it is right now. And I promise you, are going to make the best of this situation. So that's pretty much a high-level view of what communications has been doing over the past 6 weeks. So now I would like to open it up to questions if you have any.
Mr. Manuel?
Well, I don't have any questions, but I do want to comment. Of course, I was a little bit worried about this virtual graduation, and a lot of my friends were, a lot of my peers. But after hearing this and seeing the rundown, I'm actually quite surprised at how good it's going to look and feel. And it's really surprising to me that it's going to be so unique to each school. We're going to hear our president talk. We're going to hear the valedictorian, all that stuff. It makes me feel a lot better. It makes me feel a lot better about the situation as a senior. And I do like the opportunity, if things do turn around later in the year, to still have a physical one if at all possible. But this is definitely a good step for the seniors, a good way to end the year. So thank you. I like it a lot.
Jaden, I'm glad you feel that way. We have almost 14,000 graduates. And as I mentioned, over 30 graduations. And I can promise you, we're going to try to make everyone feel as special as possible. In addition to that, without sounding too TV geeky, because this is my love, we're going to just, even the pomp and circumstance, we're playing that at the beginning, we're playing that at the end, and you'll never see a photo replicated. We're taking, lots and lots of photos out of the yearbooks. And we're just doing, as I said, whatever we can to make this as unique for each school as possible.
Jaden, I can tell you that, I've had lots of discussions with the board and other members of the upper administration. I'm sure the other board members too. I mean, there's nothing more that we would love to do for you seniors than to have a physical graduation. I mean, it breaks our hearts that we can't do it. I mean, it's the first time in history of the school district that we weren't able to do that. But I assure you that that the superintendent has told me that he's working with the principals. The principals are coming up with all kinds of different ideas. Even if they can't do another graduation later, to get all the seniors together sometime during the next few months, if possible, so that you can say goodbye to your classmates, you can take pictures and say goodbye to your teachers, you can sign your yearbooks, you'll have your robes possibly, so you can take pictures with your robes on with your friends. I mean, we know that that's important to all of you. I've heard from a lot of the kids in my district, and I think they're more concerned about not walking across the stage, but just being able to say goodbye, because you didn't have that chance. You just left in the middle of the semester and thought you might come back, but at this point, you just want to be able to say goodbye, and we get that. So, the superintendent's, assured me, and I'm sure he's assured the other school board members that opportunity is out there. This is not the only thing that we want to give you. We want to give you whatever we possibly can to give you what you need to finish up your high school career. So with that said, I know that several board members want to speak. Ms. Brill, Ms. Andrews, and Ms. Whitfield. Ms. Brill first.
Thank you. So I sit in a very different situation than most of you. As you know, I only have one high school. So when I spoke to Ms. Shea, when she talked about having the congratulations from board members, the irony in my district is most of my students don't go to Park Vista. The students in my district are zoned for Boynton Beach, Olympic Heights, a few or some for West Boca and Santa Lucis. So, my thought was, and I don't know how you feel, if we're not going to just have the board chair making the congratulations, that, I would like the opportunity to just say one line at the schools, like congratulations where my students are, because my district doesn't go to Park Vista. It's the weirdest thing. Park Vista's in the corner. So I don't know how you feel about having another board member just say one sentence of congratulations, but that would be my ask, unless we're going to do just one standard speech and show our photos. So this is really for all of you to weigh in.
Ms. Brill, my understanding from talking to communications is each of you are going to give the speech for your own high schools. So I'm not giving a speech to 26 high schools. So I'm just doing the four. In fact, Claudia, you probably should have Ms. Brill. Maybe we can do two for Olympic Heights, because half of the kids at Olympic Heights are in her district and half are in my district. So, but I had no intention of taking over the responsibility of coming to your schools and doing that. So it was when it was first suggested to me, it was suggested that each board member takes his or her own high school. So that's the way it would work. Ms. Brill, you have a follow-up?
Thank you. So then as my follow-up, I'm fine with not doing all of the high schools that they're zoned for, but like my neighborhood is zoned for Boynton Beach. So, and some do go there. So my ask would be Olympic Heights and Boynton Beach, in addition to Park Vista, only because more students go to Olympic Heights and Boynton than Park Vista from where I live.
And Mrs. Brill, that's absolutely, I think it's exciting that you want to be involved in more, and that's just so typically you. So, I really appreciate that. So you've also gotten a request, I don't know if they've reached out to you yet, but South Tech wants you to be their main, okay. And so in addition to that, you'll all be taking part in this kind of goofy thing I've planned about the pledge, and you're all having a spot in that saying a line. So that's going to be kind of good too. But I'll talk to you offline and we'll work that out for sure.
All right, Mrs. Whitfield, you were next, I believe.
Well, I actually had the exact same question as Ms. Brill. I was thinking that if I could just, be an addition to the board member for the schools that, I'm very close with and spend a lot of time at, I think that would be wonderful, because I only have 3 schools as well. So some of those I spend a lot of time at. I'd love to congratulate those students as well. So, if there's a way to make that work, I think that would be wonderful. So thank you.
Dr. Rob?
Once we hang up, I'll write to all of you and ask you exactly which schools. And it's not a full speech. It's not a full 5-minute speech or anything like that. It's just a congratulations, we're so proud of you, that kind of a thing. And then you will be seeing the image of all of the board members. And this, again, is, of course, after the pledge, which will be really high in the show. But any schools that you want to talk to, we have purposely built in extra time to each show for that.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Whitfield. Ms. McQuinn, Dr. Robinson, then Ms. McQuinn.
Okay, thank you. So 2 things. First is at the in-person graduations, we don't make speeches. So I don't know, I guess we want to make speeches for us. I don't know that we're making speeches for the children. But, so I could imagine, though, that maybe we do a snippet of just congratulations that's each board member, like boom, 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 saying congratulations as, at the end of the ceremony or something. I don't know. I'm not interested in making speeches, because it's not my day. It's not my celebration. It's theirs. But the second thing is what I saw in the newspaper that Wellington High did, where they had the yard signs, that one for the valedictorian, it looked like one for each senior. That is fantastic. I absolutely love that. I don't know if we could pull that off for all the schools so that they could have the signs in their front yard so that anybody, who happened to be going by with their mask on would see the sign. I mean, and that's something they could keep. That's a memento that I think is really fantastic. So, thanks.
That's interesting. Mr. Barbieri brought that up to me also. He noticed that and asked if we would be doing anything like that. We're also doing a big social media campaign. A lot of these kids can, maybe they're not driving around right now. Maybe they are. I agree Wellington is fantastic. But yeah, so we're going to have all kinds of campaigns going like that. As far as the speeches, we weren't looking for speeches from you, but the reason why we thought of this is because traditional graduations, you're there, you're on the stage, you're a part of these kids' lives. So we just wanted to figure out a way to build you in some way, and we still have time. So this is all, pre-production, and these pieces will be all edited together, and then they will run on the scheduled dates that anybody who goes to that designated website will now see. In addition to that, anyone who can't watch these graduations the day and hour that they're airing, they're all recorded. So we can make all of these videos available for, parents or whoever wants to see them. They're just all on YouTube after their actual time slot.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Ms. McQuinn, you were next.
Knowing this may not be popular with my peers, but I know that at graduations, the kids want to hear mostly from their principal and the kids. And of course, our superintendent, and always the superintendent. I don't, in terms of large schools, I don't see any, yeah, I'm stammering now. Typically on the school's programs, obviously they list the board members. So I think it would be great if our photos were put as part of just photos. Here are, rather than just here's Barbara McQuinn or Frank Barbieri, that we would, you know, have our name with our picture. I think it's great. I want to congratulate them too. I just don't know that that's the best use of the time that the schools have. So I'm going to throw that piece out there. I've already written my 30 seconds, of course, but I don't have to give my 30 seconds. I can save it for something else. So my thought is that it be the school people themselves and our superintendent.
Thank you, Ms. McQuinn. Mr. Shaw, you were next.
Yes, thank you. What Mrs. McQuinn said, I actually taped my 30 seconds today. They came to the house and did it. So I wonder, for Ms. Shea, is this changing from what we originally had heard? Because my understanding was all the board members would do 30 seconds. That would be played at the end of the graduation, and that would be that acknowledgement. Are we talking about doing something different now, or is that still the plan?
That was still my plan, you know, that and the Pledge of Allegiance. I think you taped by the pledge today. So for that portion of it, that was my plan. So, for example, in Mrs. Brill's portion, if she wanted to do, you know, 3 schools, we're only talking about a few seconds here, 30 seconds, as you said, and we do have this time, but we're open, you know, we're open to whatever everybody wants to do. If you'd like to do one combined congratulations message where everyone says a few words and we just edit it together, we could do that and play that for all schools as well.
All right, thank you, Ms. Shaw. Mr. Manuel, you were next.
Yes, I just have one thing. One thing at graduation that a lot of people really remember is the senior class presidents turning the tassels. So if we could have each senior class president of all of the respective schools send in a video or something. Also, if that could be possible, I don't know if that's something you've already thought about, but sending in a video to maybe their principal or somebody reaching out to them. I could try to reach out to them too myself. But if we could have them inside of the virtual graduation as well, for them to turn the tassels so that we can all turn our tassels at the same time. If we're watching, that would be a power moment to me as well, and my peers too. That's something that somebody's mentioned to me about the tassels. It's important.
So what we have built in there right now is the principal is in 3 spots. You know, just a quick overview welcome when the ceremony starts. Then the principal also has a speech, and then the principal, after all of your names are read, will be doing the certification. You know, I now certify you that you've met the requirements of graduation. I now invite you to turn your tassel from, you know, right to left, and they would be doing that. So are you saying you would like the president to be standing there next to the principal then when the principal says that and turn the tassel, or you want the?
So at least last year, I went to Royal Palm Beach High School's graduation last year, and the senior class president was the one to state that and then say you may now turn your tassels. So I don't know if that's at all schools or if we could maybe implement something like that. But seeing your peer in the virtual graduation is just something else that we can maybe implement.
Yeah, let me just say, Jaden, I think that's a great idea. You know, so as the person who's at every graduation, that it is something different than a principal. It's more powerful when the senior class president gets to do that. This is a very hype moment for the kids. So if at all possible, I think that would be a better solution. The principal can certify, but let the kids. This should be about the kids. Let it be all about them.
That sounds good. Okay, so at this point, after you're certified, senior class, I now invite you to turn your tassel from right to left. Got it. Okay, that's easy.
Thank you, Ms. Brill, and then Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. So first of all, I love the suggestion from Mr. Manuel. I do think, as Dr. Robinson said, this is really about the students. It's not about us. So Mrs. McQuinn, I actually agree with what you're saying. And so, I think that I would have no problem with all of our pictures being shown at the end, or a collaborative congratulations. My intent was only to say, basically, sorry I can't be with you, but congratulations. I'm fine with just however you want to put it together, because it is about the students. And to me, it's more important that they see their senior class president turning the tassel, and they can see us at the end, and that way we're at everything. So the schools like Dreyfus and all the other schools that the students go to that we may not be able to be at, I mean, they'll just see our pictures. I'm fine with that.
Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I would like all the seniors to know, my heart goes out for them, as everyone has said. This is a rough time. I'm happy that we have the virtual graduation as a backup plan, because time is running out. But I want to thank the parents, all those parents who have sent us ideas, because they truly feel that this is a fluid time. We don't know what's going to happen from day to day. And one of my requests would be that as a board, that we see the ideas that the principals came forth with, as well as the parents. And as we move through this process, yes, we have a backup plan that hopefully this is what we're going to be doing if things remain the same. But I would like to keep a current list of what parents are saying, what principals are saying, because communities want to do things, just like Wellington High. That was great. That was something that they came up with. And other people are coming up with really unique things that they can do. It may not be the formal graduation as we know it, but some things are happening. But as time flows, we don't know what's going to happen. We know we have a plan if we stay at this mode, but as a board member, I would like to keep a list of what principals are saying, what parents are saying, so that as we begin to kind of move forward, I can, be able to have input on what's going on as we move. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Andrews. Anybody else have any questions or comments they would like to make? Mrs. Shea. Mrs. Whitfield, go ahead.
So the only issue that I had was that in the agenda it said congrats from board member, so I figured it was just the one for that school. So if we can do something that's like a really brief, all 7 of us, that'd be awesome, because I really do feel attachment to more than just my 3 schools. So I don't want them to think that we didn't care enough to send any kind of a message or be a part of it at all. Because this is, I'm really proud of them as well, and I want to be a part of it if there's something that we can do. So anyway, that was my only issue for that. But if we don't need to do the video, let me know, because I was going to record it after this call. So let me know. Thanks.
Mrs. Andrews.
I just want to follow up. Will we be able to get that information? Because I do want to, it's fluid. I want to keep up with what's going on from the families, from the communities, as well as what you're doing for the virtual. We don't know what's going to happen 15, 20 days from now. So will we be able to get that information? That's the question.
So Claudia, all those emails are coming into the, Mrs. Andrews, turn your microphone, please. Yeah, I get feedback. Claudia, so all of us are getting emails from various constituents and some of the students with all kinds of ideas from families, from parents. So I would like to see what those are too, and so that at least the parents know they're being considered, that they're part of the record, and they're not just going into the board office and going nowhere, that actually, they're being considered, and parents may come up with some idea that works at one school that won't work at another, but can you make sure that somehow we get that information so that we know that it's being followed up on?
Yes, I can. And I know that the principals have been working with these parents too. So the parents are reaching out to the board offices, but I know that they're also working with the principals. But everything that we've discussed today, I will bring up with the principals. I love the idea that Jaden had of the tassel toss. And it would be really cute to have all the board members do some collaborative congratulations at the end. That and the pledge. I think that's a really nice touch. I just didn't want there to be only a picture of you. I wanted you guys to just have at least 30 seconds to wish them congratulations. We're sorry that we're not doing this the regular way this year. Maybe we will later in the summer, but bravo for you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Dr. Fenoy, go ahead.
To Ms. Andrews' question, so Keith Oswald has all the information from the principal ideas, because he's been part of the work group, so that he can get that to the board. And all the ones that come through the board office, we have all that recorded, so we can just compile all that information and get it to you. And actually, it'll be a running list because ideas are still coming in, obviously. But we have two modes of getting you that information. Keith has it all collected from the principals, and everything coming through the board office, we will compile that so you can see it.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, board members? Mr. Manuel, do you have anything else? Thank you for sticking with us today. We'll see you next week again. Board members, if you have nothing else, Dr. Fenoy, if there's nothing else on the agenda, are you ready to adjourn?
I am, but let me say this. I mean, we did it. We had our first ever virtual board meeting with little or no hiccups. So I think the one piece of feedback I would give the group is when you're not speaking, mute your mic, and it seems like we'll be pretty good. And so, Mr. Barbieri, I think all the texts I've been getting about your beard, you need to keep that for a while. And everyone else looks healthy and good. Ms. Whitfield, I'm just so happy to see you smiling. I can't wait for you to hold your baby again. And to every other member of the team, just thank you so much for all your support. Next board meeting will be a long one. We have a lot of work for the board to consider. And so, Mr. Barbieri, thank you so much for helping us get ready for this board meeting as well. Thank you.
Dr. Fenoy, and I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to thank you for you and your staff. I mean, we could go on and on naming all the different groups that have contributed to this smooth transition, or smoothest possible transition to distance learning. But you've done a superb job keeping the board involved and keeping us up to date on what you're doing. Your staff has done a tremendous job. I know that everybody's pitched in, from the district office to the regional offices to the school site administrators to the teachers to the custodians and everybody else. I mean, I don't want to name them all because I'll miss somebody, but thank you for the dedication and the tremendous amount of work that you and your staff have done to make sure this district is still a high-performing district, and we're still high-performing in distance learning. So we appreciate everything you've done for us. With that, we can take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Mrs. McQuinn. All in favor? See hands. All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.
Have a good day, everybody.